Hello, faithful listeners. Once again, this is Going Commando with the 80's Kids. I am Karthy. I am with Ben Davis. And this week's topic, wrestling of the 80's.
90s and today even, maybe.
Oh, and we might get into that. So basically, the name of it, if you want to look it up on Spotify, is Going Commando with the 80's Kids presents Wrestling. Yeah, brother, dig it!
I've been waiting all week
again
for today, Karthy.
You know, again, I get...
Punk!
You punk! I will see you in the squared circle, brother, with all the Hulkamaniacs. Yeah, and all the things, and all the vitamins, and the prayers, and the... Yeah, whatever. I could do this all day, because it was such a large part of my childhood. But once again, I did it one other time in the podcast. But I get to do this again, and I love it, because it was... So, this was not 80's. This was Attitude Era.
Yes.
WWE. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. The WWE or WWF and D-Generation X bring to you the Tag Team Champions of the World. The Road Dogg, Jesse James. Mr. Ass, James Gunn. And we are the New Age Outlaws. Sorry for the... You didn't see that unless you were on Facebook or on YouTube, but I pointed right at him, and he froze like an armadillo in a Texas highway. Yes. And if you don't like it, we got 2 words for you. Suck it! One of the best eras of wrestling ever, but that is outside of our area, our 80s stuff. But it just gets you hype when you hear that.
It does.
It makes you want to see wrestling.
If everybody will watch our hot take from last week that I'm going to post on... I posted it on Facebook just today.
Oh, sweet.
It asked the question, DX or NWO, and Karthy gave us that answer, and you can see it. Well, if you just watched that, you can realize my answer was NWO.
I am torn between the two, but I'm going to be honest with you. At that time, I enjoyed DX better.
Yes.
They were a little bit more raunchy. Now, NWO had huge stars. I mean, you're talking about them. And I've said this before, and I'm honest, because I was a WCW dude. Worst episode ever was the NWO takeover, because there was hardly any wrestling. It was a lot of improv off the mic. It was a terrible time. But now that's 90s, but still terrible. And so, yes, if you're going to go, let's say 90s to aught, right?
Yeah.
1,000%. There's not even a second close. The era with D-Generation X. Oh my God. The pimp. I can't remember his name.
The Godfather.
The Ho Train. Okay, so again, if you think about my age and your age at the time, and we're drinking beers and we're watching TV, this is one of those instances where it kind of plays into the male soap opera and aggression. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And actually, it's been proven. There was a new study out of Germany. It was fantastic. It shows that males aren't actually more aggressive after playing video games. And it actually was sponsored with a heavy metal.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, and they said, no, heavy metal does not make males more aggressive. They're testosterone, but what it does is actually they found out their resting heart rate went down. You know what that means? The heavy metal and the wrestling calmed them down. Did not make them more hype. And so there's been all these Twitter things about it. It's a release. And so for dudes seeing another dude close, me and you, never in a million years, but we could still dream about that Colosseum in Greece, right?
Yeah.
We can still dream of glory and live vicariously through our wrestlers the same way that other people live through their basketball, baseball, football heroes, correct?
Correct.
So when people say they just, they kind of, I don't know, dismiss wrestling, I say, do you know it's fake? Well, no shit, Sherlock. I watched UFC, just so you know, it's been around for a long time.
I watched the very first UFC live.
Hoist Gracie.
You know who was at the very first UFC? The big
the
celebrity.
Huff.
That's right.
Huff.
He was there, and that was big shit.
That was huge. And him winning the first two. It came down to him and who? Who was the other guy? Because him and
Tank
Shane,
Abbott was in the very first one.
oh, but he didn't make it all the way to the end.
I don't think he did.
They showed lots of, let's say, clips of him knocking people out, and Tank Abbott being in wrestling at one point.
He did. Eventually, that was in the 90s. Well, you know,
His finishing move.
We're talking about these 90s wrestlers.
Sure.
Well, they were popular then, but they got their start and became super popular. And what I just learned this morning, I believe, it was referred to as the rock and roll wrestling era of the 80s.
I mean, I get that. I get why
Because
they called it that.
And then it went to like the Attitude Era.
It did.
And so I didn't realize that wrestling had eras, like names.
Oh yeah. There's a golden era, silver era, yeah. And it also depends before the mergers. Okay, so
okay.
So not to go off on too much of a tangent, but if you think back with the movie about who was the artist that was Kaufman,
yeah,
and the King.
Lawler.
That was a Tennessee association.
That was big stuff, though.
That was huge, and they would even go up. But there was also a Minnesota, Chicago, New York.
But as for us
Vince,
Southerners,
being from ECW, he's from North Carolina.
I know, yeah.
Like, represent, dude. I mean, that dude's from North Carolina.
You wouldn't know it.
He couldn't get into the South because of the Tennessee. And like I said before, NWA was before. They did not want to be associated with Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, Yellow, Ice Cube, etc. Yes, I just went there. Yeah,
so they prefer to be associated with Ric Flair,
right?
Terry Bullard, and Arn Anderson,
and so they changed the name to World Championship Wrestling, and versus National Wrestling Alliance, and it was a Southern Alliance.
Yeah.
But once Vince kind of took over the whole Northeast, then they had to do something.
This is Senior, Vince McMahon Senior.
Yes,
this time.
But Junior is the one that brought them all together. They were smaller promotions that he would bring into one big promotion. But once he got into the television market and found out, everybody's still going to pay a ticket to come see me, just like baseball. But other people will watch on TV. That's when it blew up.
Yeah.
And then at that time, you had Ric Flair pretty much going everywhere.
He was.
And then Hulk Hogan wrestling locally. And then Vince, once he found him, he said, I have a cash cow.
Well, I just saw something very interesting. It was Ric Flair giving a little interview, and he was talking about Hulk Hogan. And this was like This was like in the early 80s when Hulk was really big and right at the very beginning of Hulkamania. And like you said, he was traveling everywhere as the NWA World Champion.
Yes.
And then he went home off to see his dad, and Dad's like, so how's it going, son? He's like, it's going pretty good, Dad. I'm the world champion, traveling around, making some money. He's like, well, I hear about this Hulk Hogan guy. He's like, oh, yeah, I've heard about him. He's like, well, I hear he's a champion. He's like, well, I'm the champion too, Dad, And he's like, well, how can you be the champion and him be the champion?
Yeah, he was saying, my friends know Hulk Hogan. They don't know you. And he's like, fuck you, Dad.
Yeah, pretty much. He's like, gee, Dad, thanks.
And then he went, fuck you, Hogan. In jest, not serious.
Fuck you, Hogan.
But he made also a good point during the interview, being if you would have asked who's the better showman, it was Hogan. Who was the better wrestler?
It's always been Flair.
Always been Flair.
Us being from the South,
yes,
we were in the '80s WCW people, which is interesting because I had a friend growing up who was always a WWF guy. He didn't watch WCW.
Well, I'll tell you, not to interrupt, but mine was when I was in Georgia, WCW. By the time I moved to North Carolina, it was WWF because of the wrestlers. Yeah. And then when I got older in college and no one watched wrestling but me, I switched back to WCW until the Attitude Era. So I went constantly back and forth chasing the better storyline. And I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
I think ours was due to the television, as you just stated, because cable was not readily available.
Yeah,
where I grew up.
And what was WWF at the time on?
USA.
USA. You had to have cable.
Yeah.
WCW eventually got to TNT.
TBS
or TBS,
whichever one.
It was TNT Nitro.
That's right, yeah, because it was on TBS before. That's right.
And so, again, that was a shift up for both of them.
Yeah.
Now you had to have cable, but it
Well,
did increase the experience in terms of now I can tape twice and make 3 TV shows out of it.
Best I recall, TBS showed up on a basic satellite dish platform you could get in the 80s because we had that big son of a bitch.
I'll be honest, we
satellite dish.
We had cable and it was always basic.
Yeah.
Plus HBO.
Yeah.
That was the one thing we splurged on. And USA back then was still a Chicago station, so it was always 1 hour behind.
Yeah, it was always an upgrade for USA.
So you always had for us, whatever package we had in Georgia, it wasn't. But you had to be aware.
Yeah.
Again, if this is shot in Chicago, there's no transfer of time back then. So if it says it's coming on at 8 a.m., it's going to come on at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So even back then, they had those type of stations, and it was local. USA was local in Chicago. It was one of the channels you could find, like Fox for us back in the day. Mm-hmm. Fox was prolific in the South because they put up towers everywhere.
Yep.
And they made sure you could turn to UHF 45 and see their movie. They didn't have programming during the day way back in the day, but they did have movies at night. And then they had their weekend lineup, which we've talked about before with Married with Children, Tracy Ullman Show, Herman's Head. All these shows that kind of led into Fox becoming this Richard Branson dominated conglomerate that now has sports. And, I think from what I've been told, Australians act a little bit more like the southern part of the United States, just for what I've been told. And I'm not making a judgment. But yeah, so you're talking about a guy from Australia who's a billionaire that buys a TV show or a type TV kind of conglomerate that is literally starting to boom. And it's because of shows like Married with Children and things like that. And then the controversy, as we talked before, with I'm not going to buy detergent if it... Yeah, that backfired. More people bought detergent than ever.
Yep.
But anyway, that's off subject. So back to the 80s wrestling. It kind of ties in terms of marketing.
Yeah. And
things like that. Hogan was immensely marketable.
I think Andre the Giant was a bigger meal ticket coming into the 80s.
If you watch the...
he went all the way to the beginning of the 90s. Too.
Oh, yeah. And if you watch the documentary, which is so interesting about him, there was no bigger pull than Andre the Giant until, let's say, WrestleMania Hulk.
Yeah, I want to talk about Andre before I talk about anyone.
No, I'm just saying, there is no one. If you said Andre was going to be at a wrestling arena, it sold out.
It did, yeah.
Every single time.
I don't think there's ever been anyone quite as impressive of a specimen of a human being as him.
They had the second Hulk. He just wasn't as big as the original.
Yeah.
Or Giant. I said Hulk.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
The big
I was sitting here thinking about but yeah, the other Hulk. The big slow.
Yeah.
But yes, for a normal person, and again, remember, this is pre-internet. This is pre-multiple channels on TV.
Mm-hmm.
This is almost in the era of Carney Island, where, back in the day, we still went to the zoo with amazement.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we went to carnivals with amazement.
We did.
Now everything's ruined because it's all online.
Damn ruiners.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, back then, the closest to that, when you had a wrestling thing, if they said Andre the Giant, if you're an average country boy, and, it's changed, so they're even smaller than we are now, the average height. So, it's always pumped into your head now, 5'10", 185 pounds.
Yeah.
Well, 20 years ago, it's 5'8", 165 pounds. 20 years before that, I don't think we were that much shorter, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
5'7", 5'8" for a male, and then there were taller people. And when you see someone that is 2 feet larger than you, and literally, if you could take little cutouts on you and put it on his back, it would take 3 of them to cover his back.
That's hilarious.
It's almost like a carnival show.
That is.
And then he gets in there and he's as maneuverable. Now, he wasn't great, don't get me wrong, but he could move fairly well for a giant.
He could do drop kicks at the beginning of it. But Vince don't.
The most graphic. So this is back when he wore the red tights.
Yes.
And yes, I saw him do a drop kick, and I went, that man is dead. That man is literally dead. He just kicked the soul out of him. It's gone. So, and there's so many stories about him.
Some JR would say, "Oh my God, that man is dead! That man is dead!
Somebody get an ambulance! Call the police! Oh my God!"
And then there's Lawler outside. Yeah, he's dead.
No, he'd be like, "Where are the puppies?" So anyway, that dude being so huge. There's also, again, for those that have seen the, let's say, the documentary, there was nobody that messed with him in the locker room. Like, literally.
What kind of idiot would?
And on top of it, there was one recently that was circulating on Facebook about Bam Bam Bigelow, R.I.P. I think he's not with us anymore.
He is dead, yes.
But yeah, he talked about the time that he was wrestling Andre, and he somehow pissed him off in the locker room, and all the guys were literally in the back around a telemonitor because they knew what was coming.
Oh my God.
Big John Studd made the mistake one time because Big John Studd, in a bigger wrestling thing, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's a Friday night or it was actually not a Starcade.
That was back when he was doing WWF.
Right, and so Big John was tall, man. He could do the one leg.
He was a big guy. He was like a 6'7", 6'8" guy.
Oh, he's more like 6'10", dude. He was huge.
Oh, is he? Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at the video with him and Andre. But, again, the documentary, you don't step up. That's Andre's thing.
Yeah.
You don't step on Andre's toes. And then they kind of dissect the match. And they said when he hit him in the chest one time with that, the open hand, not the backhand, but the open hand, you could see the life leave Big John Studd's face. And he talked about it later. He's like, I don't ever want to wrestle that guy again. Ever. And Bam Bam Bigelow did the same thing. There is a video where he fought him, and his chest is just purple. And Andre put him on the rope and started choking him. His face turned purple. So when you have someone that, like you said, is such a specimen, and I don't mean to be mean by saying this. When I look at him, I think, well, that's how they killed woolly mammoths. No, because everybody was his size.
Okay.
With giant, huge spears. If I was that size, I wouldn't be as scared. Let's put it that way. As size I am now. But good gosh, and he had such a presence. I won't say it was arrogance. I've never seen arrogance in Andre. I've always just seen assuredness. He was well aware of how huge he was. And how strong he was. He was so much stronger than the average human being. It wasn't even a little. Wrestlers have talked about this for years. How strong the man really was, and how much, it's almost like Spider-Man. He had to pull everything. Pull all of his punches, pull all of his chops. Because if he hit you with all of his strength, you're not coming back next week because no one wants to see a guy with a Andre the Giant palm print and a bruise on his chest. So yes, I love the fact that you brought up Andre because he did start in the late 70s, but he dominated the 80s again up until the passing of the torch is what I'll call the slam by Hulk Hogan. That's the passing of the torch. Andre literally saying, I'm getting a little bit older. Someone else has to be the draw.
Well, that was the second time Hogan slammed him.
Yeah.
The first time was when Hogan was actually a heel. And slammed him, and Hogan said the first time he slammed him, he said that Andre weighed about 390 to 410.
Okay.
And when he slammed him the second time, he came in like 480 to 5.
Yeah.
He said, but when he picked him up, he said he had to weigh 700 pounds. And he ended up tearing his lat when he did it.
The WrestleMania slam?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea. I'd never heard about that before. But yes, and I remember this. I was actually thinking about it on the way over here. Excuse me. You could tell from the footage that he couldn't do it the first time.
Yeah.
He tried, and his back went out.
Probably when he did it.
So they had to kind of re-maneuver, and then he got it on the second try. But yeah, Andre, 8th wonder of the world, dude. Bigger than life. Also, they talked about his drinking prowess.
Oh, God.
They showed an average beer in his hand.
Yeah, it was crazy, wasn't it?
And it looks like those 8-ounce Cokes to us, like normal people.
Yeah.
And apparently he'd have 24 beers, a couple of bottles of wine, and 2 pints of vodka. And that's what made him feel good. Now, again, if I was 7'4" and weighed, again, they saying 500, but he might weigh upwards of 600 pounds. Oh my gosh, your metabolism has to be ridiculous. I mean, you know, they tell you to take your body weight, and that's the number of calories.
Yeah.
So I'm measured this morning. I'm like right around 245. So that means that I burned 2450 calories. Now I don't believe that now that I'm 47, but you know, back in the day, that's what they said you would burn. Can you imagine an individual that weighed 600 pounds and they're telling you your resting metabolism is 6,000? That's how insane big that dude was. But anyway, we've spent enough time on the 8th wonder of the world. One of the best wrestlers ever. And of course, for our childhood in the 80s, such a dominant personality throughout the first, like, what, 2/3 before Hulkamania really went off.
Yeah, and he came in.
Maybe mid 80s or whatever. And so if we're going to talk about things, so we're talking about most popular ever is what we're kind of discussing right now. You can't leave out Hogan.
You can never leave out the Hulkster.
The Hulkster, brother. And again, one of those guys that said everything right. And I have said this for 30 years. God, I'm old. But I have said this. Every single person who was massive, other than Andre the Giant, has been especially good on the mic.
Yeah, Andre didn't give good interviews. He just grab your face and pick you up or something.
Right. I don't know, Mean Gene, and like palmed his face.
But Hogan, he was good because he gave you about 32 brothers every interview, about 32 flexes, the 24-inch pythons.
So I'll go
right?
The 24-inch pythons, and so I'll go even a little deeper. What if you're a parent in the 80s?
Oh, that's right. He gave you
and you
say your prayers.
Literally, and you are sitting there watching. You know, you're trying to have a good breakfast, and you know, I hate to say it, but the TV babysat us
Saturday morning,
and then Hogan comes out. Yes, obey your parents, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, work hard. How can you not, as a parent, go, this guy's a genius? I mean, you kind of get where I'm coming from. Yeah. And then that's what led into, in my opinion, the Saturday morning cartoon, the cereals, the action figures, the T-shirts. Oh my God, I had a Hulkamania yellow T-shirt with it red Hulkamania. Of course I did. I mean, come on. And so, marketing genius. Now, I was different back in the day in terms of who was most popular.
Yeah.
So I know we're going most popular ever.
So he was the guy you went for back then when you were a kid?
Not my favorite, but I did go for him.
My favorite back then in that time, I was a Macho Man.
Oh,
can you dig
I
it?
loved Macho Man, but there was always, I'm not gonna lie, there was something off about his speech patterns where I'm like, that dude is roided and he's gonna kill me.
Oh, the cream
I feel like
rises to the top.
I feel like the Hulkster would, shield me from meteors. I feel like Macho Man be like, you're gonna get up there and you're gonna put your best suit on, and you're gonna face those meteors, brother. You know what I'm saying? Like
he made me feel like I could do it.
Oh, but I love Miss Elizabeth.
I just popped something.
Oh, yeah, that's what you get for going brother when you're, how old are you?
42.
God, I forget. Man, I miss 42. Anyway, but yes.
It all hurts,
It all hurts, brother. Again, 3 years, we're going to have a special episode at my dinner when I turn 50, and I just officially give up on everything. But yeah, so Randy, but now, no, because that's in, Oh, okay. So we're going top 3 at the very end.
At the very end. We can't do that. This is this period.
But
right
let's
here.
talk about this period. I was much more of a fan, and I was weird. I didn't have necessarily like my favorite. Again, this is 80s. Now, in the 90s, I had a definite favorite.
Oh, yeah, that's totally... we're getting to that era.
But in the 80s, I was much more, believe it or not, a tag team guy. I loved...
Well, they were huge in the 80s.
It was fantastic.
You were a demolition guy, weren't you?
No.
Road Warriors.
Road Warriors,
yeah.
my friend. Where are they from?
I don't recall.
Chicago.
Oh.
So I'm a kid.
I did not know that at all.
So I'm a kid in Georgia.
Yeah.
And the Road Warriors come down there from Chicago wrestling circuit. Like, they stole them. Yeah. And they're like, from the mean streets of Chicago is Animal and Hawk. The Temple, the Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom, yeah.
Oh my God, with those spiked Georgia color. Literally, it's red and black. So everybody in Georgia loved it. Because it was the spiked and the war paint. And they did not mess around.
Nope.
It was, we'll go into it later, but Goldberg was the same concept.
Yes.
The indestructible force. And it was fun. Now, side note, I actually met Hawk before he passed, and Animal. The weirdest story ever. So, in Eden, North Carolina, there is a guy that I know I graduated named Chris. I won't say his name on the podcast fully. And he wrestled. And he knew a lot of people. And so he would throw on his own promotions at the Armory, where they could put up a ring and stuff like that. And so there was one place in Eden, again, not going to name it for security or privacy or whatever, but you could get whatever you wanted there. And you could also get food and beer. And so I'm sitting around the table at my normal spot because it's 5 minutes from the house I'm staying in. And that's when I used to drive an hour and a half to go to school. Again, totally off subject, but it'll come back, I promise, in a second. And so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, I look up. It's the Barbarian. Yeah, everybody knows that big dude. And I went, that can't be right. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing, K-Quick, a black dude, very popular, had a rap that everybody was into. Insanely athletic dude. And then I saw Hawk. Yeah. And they sat down, and they're so huge in real life. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like going to an NFL game. Unless you're down on the field, they look big. But when you get in front of some of these offensive tackles that are 6'8", 6'9", and 400 pounds, you're like, my God, that's a massive human being. And so these guys are tall, but they're also, like, their biceps are bigger than my thigh. And Chris walks in behind them and sits, and he's buying them dinner. And I'm just kind of like side-eyeing. I'm like, I don't want to enrage the dragon, you know what I mean? I don't want someone to come over here and punch me in the face, even though that'd be a cool story. But Chris sees me, and he's like, hey, do you want to meet the guys? And I'm like, please. You know what I mean? So I got to meet all of them. I told Hawk that I was originally from Chicago. Well, I was technically born in Naperville, but the outside. He's like, oh! And I was like, I saw you at Starrcade 83 when you and the Midnight Express were in a cage match with the scaffolding. He's like, how do you remember? And I'm like, it's burnt into my brain. I was like, I was in Deep South, but I was from the Midwest. So no one liked me. Like, everybody's like, oh, rebel, back in the day. Like, you're a Yankee. I'm like, technically, no, I'm from the Midwest, but yeah, sure. And I was like, you guys were the Chicago Wrecking Crew. I'm like, I had something to latch onto, and you guys were, and so we ended up talking for a while, and he's like, are you coming to the match tomorrow night? I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he goes, Chris, and so Chris is like, make sure he has tickets. And he's like, all right, I'll sell them to you half price because Hawk is like literally vouching for you. I mean, literally had to leave the bar, run home. This was when I was super poor. Like, get into my hidden money stash, come back, pay for the tickets. I bought me and my brother a ticket. And I told them, me and my brother will be there tomorrow. You can't miss us. He's like 6'8". And I said, I'm not short at 6'3". I said, but we're going to probably sit near the back because I don't like sitting in front of people because of my height. I get real paranoid. And I said, but you will know where we're at. And shit you not, the next night they came out. Side note, they ended up hurting a guy. They did. They did the, the clothesline off the shoulders. Demolition did the elbow off of the knee, if you remember your wrestling correctly. But yes, he literally turned to me and my brother, and he went, "Oh, what a rush!" And I mean, I died. I was like, he literally, like, this is what he used to do on TV. And he just did it to me and my brother, and we were just like, yeah, Chicago, and then Animal's even looking at us going, and he says something, he's like, that dude's from Chicago, and he's like, roar, doing his best orc growl at me or whatever it is. But anyway, yes, so I know that was a tangent, but I love talking about wrestling if you can't hear the excitement in my voice. But yes, and so when the Hogan era was out, I still liked other wrestlers better than him. Yeah. It's sort of like rooting for the guy you know is going to always win. But, if you ask me, when the music comes up and he's running around and pointing, yes, of course, that's exciting. He was a great wrestler. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think it's akin to what we've talked about with, so this is kind of off subject, but it's the same concept, the Michael Bay Transformers movies.
Oh,
did it follow the Transformers I knew? No.
No, it did not.
Is it a good 80s cartoon Transformers movie? Hell no. Is it a great movie about robots who transform? Hell yes, it is. Really because it's fun to watch. So of course Hogan is that guy that's fun to watch. But I was always kind of like an underdog guy. And so Hogan was not my favorite by any means. And I was a Flair guy.
Me too.
I was a Flair guy. I always thought especially because he would go so long. He would wrestle for an hour. Yeah. And it was entertaining. He would bleed. He'd turn that bleached blonde hair a pink color. You know what I mean? Hogan didn't do that as much. Let's put it
My
that way.
grandmother had a thing for Ric Flair. That's how I always, ever since I was a young kid, I can remember. Before I knew what wrestling was, people in my family would just randomly go, woo!
I was going to say, and that's a great point. Name any wrestling move today, any wrestling scenario, AEW, TNA, WCW, WWE, and F, whatever. Name one move that universally gets a crowd pop. Other than you karate chop somebody, woo!
Yeah.
He has literally put himself into a pantheon that he'll be remembered forever.
Do you know his catchphrase?
God bless. I know my favorite, so let me say it.
I don't know. It's the one that they use in the football locker rooms, to be the best, you got to beat the best is one of his. Yeah. But now for my favorite, especially now that I'm 47 and old, 1000% is I'm like Space Mountain. Oldest ride, longest line, baby. I wish I could remember what it was. Have a hard time keeping these alligators down.
Oh, with his shoes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, he's the limousine rider.
Yes.
Private jet flying. Kiss stealing. Wheeling and dealing. Alligator shoe wearing. Tailored suit appearing. Nature Boy. Ric Flair. Woo!
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, that was like his shtick. He said, my suit is... he would point at somebody in the audience.
A new suit every week.
And he would point at someone in the audience. He'd go, hey, my suit, more than you make in a year there, bub. Yeah. He was so good at the crowd interaction. Now, Hogan, not as much.
No.
He would do, let's say, an entire crowd. Like, get the pop from the hulking out. Ric Flair would point out your mama and insult her. That's why he was loved by everybody.
Then he'd go by and get her a kiss on the cheek.
Oh, Lord. Kissed the girls and made them cry. Woo! That is one of the best mic people, and we're going to get to that. That's actually 2 from now. Let's go ahead and let's do number 3 instead of 2. We'll go to number 2 next. Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
Best on the mic. Yeah. That is our next subject, baby, other than most popular. And I think we covered basically the top 3 of all time. Now, real quick before we move on, I will say, for those of you who are listening, yes, Stone Cold is up there.
Yeah.
Another person who transcends wrestling, because now you can go to any wrestling venue and you can say as a wrestler, I took a whiskey shot. What?
Yeah.
I took a gin shot. What? I drank 1 beer. What? 2 beers. What? Everybody responds. So again, it's something that almost transcends wrestling. And so he is up there. But we're talking 80s. He was still wearing the long, flowing locks.
He was Stunning Steve.
He was still great, brother. You pulled it right out of my mouth. He was still Stunning Steve. The Rock.
Till he went bald.
Yeah, until he went bald. Rocky Maivia. Remember, Rocky Maivia when he came out, not The Rock. He moved into that.
In the 80s, The Rock was still a kid.
Yes. He was playing at University of Miami.
Wasn't that the early 90s he did that?
I could have swore he was in wrestling by the mid 90s.
It was
after having gone to college, tried football, and then not succeeded.
He only did pro football for 2 years.
I believe that's correct. It's like Goldberg.
Yeah, I thought he was on the Miami team from '89.
One of the coolest things, like the
93.
national championship game, they have him tackling somebody, and there's a picture from Sports Illustrated, and he's doing the Rock Eye, even way back then. But again,
well, he's a different subject.
We're talking 80s.
Pretty much named the most
during
popular
the 80s, who's the best, Mike? I do believe Hogan and Rick are up there. Now, here's a question for you, though. Who would you name after them in terms of being able, in those little segments and in those interviews with Mean Gene?
I wanted to say Savage, but actually Roddy Piper's.
Savage was great. Oh, Roddy Piper. Oh my gosh, fantastic pull, dude. Roddy Piper was so good that they decided to let the wrestlers rest and give him 15 minutes in the ring by himself. Yeah, called the Piper's Pit. Yes, sir. That's a great pull.
And he wrestled for every organization as well.
Yes, he was a like Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Sojourner. Wherever the money was, he went.
Yep.
And he was so likable. People naturally gravitated towards him. He was like the everyday guy, almost. He was a little bit more Northeast than me because he kind of talked and felt more like a Boston or a New York factory worker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a blue collar guy.
I think they labeled him from Detroit when he was actually from
even better.
From Canada, actually.
Yeah, that's fair, but that's even better. I'm a working guy. I'm in the factories. And that stuck. And and he could portray that very, very well. It led into other things that we're going to talk about next. But yeah, that's a great pull. Another one on the mic. So this is an old pull.
Yeah.
If you guys don't remember, but Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Oh yeah,
the manager to the Superstars.
Well, he was so good that not only did he do that stuff, but he eventually was a commentator.
Yes, he was. He managed the best of the best, and back then, managers got dirty.
Yeah,
he would get in the ring, he would stomp on people, and then he would get body slammed. Or whatever, somebody's special move, if that's what we're going to call it. Same ilk, and we cannot forget this guy. And I love him. He is he's a harsh critic, though. If you follow him on Twitter or X, man, is he harsh. Jim Cornette.
I love Jim Cornette because today he keeps it real about wrestling. He does not like it when you break the wrestling code.
I agree with that, and so I do. I agree with some of the things that he says in terms of the wrestling code.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this isn't cool. You know what I mean? Like, this is not going to get anybody to watch your wrestling show. Excuse me. And when he had the megaphone rather.
And the tennis racket.
Even better.
He was spectacular.
How many times did he slide in, get you in the gut with it? Someone else slides over and pins you. One of the best ever to ever do it. And again, more in-ring involvement than your average manager. So from him, I would go Jimmy, mouth of the South Heart.
Yeah.
Less in-ring though. More megaphone, more talking. When the guys couldn't do a promo, he talked, and then they would be like, raw, Hulk smash, do whatever.
Oh, so he would give the interview. Okay, that's why you're saying he's best on mic is because
again, these are literally people that. Well, okay, so yeah, that's actually kind of cool that you mentioned that. I guess in my brain, without realizing it, I was thinking about people who could give interviews and could do little segments. And in some of these cases, wow, you're actually 100% right. I didn't think about it, but it was literally because you could be 6'8", weigh 300 pounds, and bench press 5, and be a great wrestler. It doesn't mean that you can actually talk.
You know who I always thought gave a pretty decent one?
Who?
Razor Ramon.
Oh! Hey, yo.
Yep.
He was actually pretty good. I would say less so Scott Hall.
Yeah, that's whenever they started trying to be cool.
Diesel didn't give as good as...
but Kevin Nash gave better.
Oh.
It's weird, though.
Wait, hold on. Am I getting those wrong?
No, you're right, because Diesel was nothing. Diesel just kind of did this.
No, but is Diesel Kevin?
Yeah, Diesel's Kevin Nash.
Kevin Nash,
yeah.
And then I said Scott Hall, and I meant Diesel, so I apologize to the listeners. So
no, you're
Scott,
right. You're
so
really,
Scott was...
what you said was correct.
Well, what was his... Yeah, Razor Ramon was his first.
He did great when he was playing.
When he was like Latino and
Yeah.
everything. And again, one of those things, if you're a wrestling fan and someone goes, hey, yo.
Yep.
There's no way you don't remember who's that from. What, now, again, not disparaging Kevin Nash, because I love Diesel. I loved he was fantastic. Up until the point where he tasered Goldberg. But that's in the 90s.
Scott Hall did that.
But that was 90s, and screw that. But yes, what was his... Well, I mean, honestly, what was his catchphrase? When he used to come down to the ring, they would play literally a train sound in the beginning. You know, it was, this is Big Daddy Diesel.
Big Daddy cool.
Yeah. And so we're going Mike.
Yeah.
You gotta give it to him. We've already talked about D-Generation X. Jesse James, very good on the mic.
Oh, wait, we forgot somebody else.
Who?
Sting. Sting was really good.
Sting, okay, so I have a differing opinion. I would say he's good. I wouldn't say he's really good. However, given, I used to see him down in Georgia when he had the neon tights.
I remember that,
and just the face paint.
I remember that.
It was almost like warrior face paint.
Yeah.
And he was like a surfer dude almost. And he was fantastic.
He was my favorite wrestler for so long.
When he got into more of the Crow stuff, I felt like it took he was trying to be too brooding and he couldn't pull it off.
I'm with you.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But yes, so I will give you, if we're talking about Sting in the 80s,
yes,
I gotta give you a 10,000 thumbs up because when he was the Stinger, the high flying guy that leapt off the ropes, and oh God, yes, that was an era. Wow, that is so cool. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Not just good call, but thank you for bringing that up. Because at that time, man, did he give a good interview. Yeah. He was so excited, and he almost had something close to the woo.
Yes, he did. That's
like
right.
a woo, like a yell or something that he did.
The sting or something.
Yeah, but it was close to the woo, and everybody.
And I love it because he had the scorpion, because I'm a Scorpio. I was like,
everybody, the scorpion does. Everybody knew it, and so that's perfect, dude. That's actually a great call. So anybody that you can think of, I'm literally turning in my head now, just 80s folks, because me and you were in our 20s.
Other 80s folks I can remember that I remember specifically that I'm like did not at that time. Bret Hart did not.
He didn't do the greatest.
Undertaker definitely not.
No,
not yet.
Well, at that point he was still Mean Mark, and then he morphed into the Undertaker.
There at the end, he was the Undertaker, and he was just
not great. Yeah, you're right about that.
Somebody with him did, but we'll talk about that later. Excuse me. Lex Luger, no.
Not as good, and just as a shout back, remember that his pop was in WCW or NWA. He was the Fifth Horseman.
Oh, Horseman.
That's where he got his thing. Arn and Ole Anderson.
Arn Anderson, not really.
Telly Schiavone and Ric Flair. 4 Horsemen. Not Telly Schiavone. Oh, jeez. Or is that it? Or is Schiavone? No, Schiavone's the announcer. Yeah. Oh, I'm such a bad wrestling.
Bullard.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm such a bad wrestling fan right now.
Best,
but Luger came out as that, and then he went to the WWF as the narcissist.
That's right. I remember Arn Anderson giving one interview that I remember only. and it was right before whatever they had. Something here they had it here in Winston-Salem. It was a Starcade or something like that.
Starcade was huge.
Yeah, and he's like, and I expect it to be bad. I expect to get hurt. I expect to have broken bones and my head be smashed in and be bleeding everywhere. I've already booked me a room at the Baptist Hospital there in Winston-Salem. And I looked over at my mom and I said, Mom, can you actually go ahead and book your room in advance at the hospital if you expect to be hurt? She's like, no, you cannot.
If you're rich enough, you can do anything. But yes, Arn Anderson gave a decent, not great. His brother really never said much. It was mostly Flair doing the talking.
Well, they were also the Brain Busters in the WWF before they were over
That's
in WCW.
after they were the Midnight Express, and that is how I will always know Arn and Ole Anderson. Again, just off subject, because their biggest rival in the South was you remember?
The Midnight Express.
Who's their biggest rival?
Probably the Rock and Roll Express.
That's exactly right. And I can't remember their names, even though they're still wrestling today. Like,
Marty Jannetty and...
Yes, Jannetty and... Oh, my brain's just not working right now.
Obviously not the other guy.
But yes, you're 100% right. That is awesome. Good memory, dude. Yes, so some of the wrestling...
Was Shawn Michaels with Jannetty?
No. Shawn... Oh, yes, he was. After Jannetty left the Rock and Roll Express, and they went from NWA, WCW, whatever, into the WWF. Him and Shawn Michaels were the what? Oh, they were tag team champions.
Yeah, they were. There was some sort of express
Heartbreak Express. Heartbreak Express. He's the Heartbreak Kid. Did they go from the Heartbreak Express to the Heartbreak Kid? Oh, my brain. Oh.
I don't know that one.
But you're right. That is a good pull, dude. I had totally forgotten about that. When they made the change, the blonde guy with the mullet didn't make the leap.
He didn't make it.
No,
Jannetty looks bad these days.
All of them look bad,
well,
dude.
You know, what's his name's cross-eyed.
When I go to Comic-Con,
which
I love with Galaxy Con here in North Carolina.
I really wanted to go this year.
I wanted to as well, but with the SAG-AFTRA, I've heard, and also I'm so glad I didn't go. I heard it was so overbooked, and people were just rude as hell this year. So I'm glad I went 2 years ago before it got too big. And these people don't know how to put on a con. So if we're going to go to a con, which we could do and then broadcast, obviously, we're going to go to Dragon Con in Atlanta.
Okay.
But anyway, I saw, who were the three guys? Sergeant Slaughter. And...
Oh, he was pretty decent on the mic.
And, he was pretty darn good. You're all right about that. And then Jake the Snake Roberts. I saw them today.
Jake the Snake was awesome on the mic in the 80s.
He was and he was kind of like ruthless. He was almost like an evil Magnum PI.
You're right. He even had that...
With the mustache?
Stupid mustache. How did he sniff so much cocaine in that mustache?
You know, when the snake looks into your eyes and hypnotizes you, you just do whatever the snake does.
I bet you he was sniffing cocaine for days because so much was in that stash. I bet if he ever wanted to hit, he did that, and he was great.
So for our current wrestling fans, I'm going to tell you, I heard one of... Have I told you this story yet? The funniest thing I've heard on wrestling in 10 years?
I don't think so, my friend.
All right, so don't watch too much WWE. Don't watch a lot of AEW, but I love wrestling. So if it's on, I'm going to watch it. There is a new wrestler called L.A. Knight.
L.A. Knight? That's not a good name.
And he's pretty good on the mic. Since we're talking about it, let's just go into it for current reasons. But a lot of people kind of, I don't know, label him as a Stone Cold Rock wannabe.
Okay.
But he said the literal funniest line I have heard in wrestling in 10 years. So I got to share it with our listeners.
Okay.
Him and The Miz were going at it.
Yeah.
Arguing back and forth, right? And The Miz was like, "You're nothing. You're, 6 months. Nobody's going to know you. Yada. And L.A. Knight looked at him and said, "You're so thin and white, Hogan would have snorted you during the 80s. Dude, you're dying. Nobody can see this except for me. I'm looking at Ben's face. The YouTube people saw him like literally. I'm restraining hysterical laughter. That is exactly what since we're talking about it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Woo!
So, but that's what wrestling is missing, is the attitude. This PC bullshit doesn't go over well with the wrestling crowd. So let's just be honest. You know,
Unless we have a new wrestler.
I would say that the upper 1% might not be the they're investing a lot in wrestling, right?
They're not looking for Scrooge McDuck.
Right. And so, let's say
they're looking for Huey Dewey. Louie.
Let's say it is the blue collar workers that love wrestling, which, I mean, at least from what I've seen and what I've observed, and being a blue collar worker myself, that's who they are. Yeah. Like we talked about earlier, and we won't go into it too deep because it is 90s. However, the mental release of the soap opera, the ability to scream with 50,000 other people sometimes, the energy that is in those wrestling matches can be unmatched, only equal to certain concerts. And so, I think playing to the crowd that doesn't watch wrestling to keep them placated is going to go the way of the dodo. Now, I'm not going to express my opinions about the Bud Light thing. I'm only going to state the facts, which is Bud Light as a brand, not Anheuser-Busch. However, Bud Light as a brand has taken some losses.
Yeah.
Target. Not going to express my opinion because that's not important in this podcast. We are literally here to make you laugh and talk about stuff. However, I'm going to state the facts. They've taken a loss. So, if you know who your consumer base is, play to them. And the Attitude Era, they would have a 20 share sometimes. That's insane. That's insane ratings. They would beat Seinfeld. They would beat Monday Night Football back in the day.
They did.
There were more people watching American wrestling than there were Monday Night Football.
They got a good thing going.
If you're not a football fan, but you enjoy the soap opera, I'm sorry, man. Just be logical about it. You know what I mean? Take out all the beef and the machismo and all that other crap. Just look at the numbers. I feel like if they ever want to hope to get back there, they're just going to have to do something different. Now, AEW tried because they curse.
Oh.
Yes, they do. You can kiss my country ass, or whatever that one guy says. And everybody screams it. I thought this is a step in the right direction. Get people involved.
But they stopped saying ass and stuff on...
they just different, for a while, yeah.
Oh, huh.
Suck it and all this other stuff, that went away after the lawsuits and everything. You know what I mean? And so it's been kind of
bland.
Blanche. Everything I look at is just white and, you know what I mean? Nothing. There's no flavor there. They're getting closer.
Yeah.
They're getting closer. They're just really far away. So the reason I bring that up is because when we grew up, wrestling was colorful. Wrestling sold T-shirts.
Speaking of someone who was very colorful. Before we break into the next
number
thing,
3, which
this guy gave a decent mic.
All right, who?
But he was a monster in the ring, the Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, that's so funny, because as soon as you said that, I was like, yes. But he took it too far. He opened a web... It's after Tony Bonilla kind of left WWE or WWF at the time, he went insane.
He even changed his name to Warrior.
Yeah, he had a website. And I think he blurred the lines of reality a little bit, because
I think he was a little crazy.
Some of the things he said on his website, which were him talking, sounded too much like a wrestling promo. It was all about ascension and seeing different layers of reality and the warriors and the power that they give him. Oh, Lord, dude. But I will say this, nothing That is immediately who I chose over Hogan the moment he showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go ahead and say it. WCW just said, hey, you got the Warrior, we got Goldberg.
Yeah.
They copied an 80s thing.
They did, you're right.
During the 90s. Like, we got this huge dude. We're not going to let him win. He's massive, bald. He looks mean. He is so strong, it is insane. He picked up the freaking second giant, who's still over 400 pounds.
Yeah.
He's not pushing 5 like they said.
No.
But he was 400 and then like held him there for a little bit. It'd be different if he didn't hold him, but he held him in a upper suplex before the power suplex.
I mean,
that is a strong,
that's some serious weights,
dude. And so, back to the 80s, the blueprint came from the Warrior. He would run it. I remember at one point he had the record for shortest match ever. That was like one of his little things that they tried to do to push him over. He ran in with his music, the heavy metal.
Yeah.
Ran in, came in, clotheslined the guy, pinned him, and then ran out. That's Goldberg. He comes in,
did that shit with the Warrior.
The guy tries to punch him, he blocks it, he throws him into the thing, he clotheslines him, he spears him.
It's funny because
Jackknife,
I love
pile
Goldberg,
driver.
but I hated the Warrior.
Oh,
and I think part of the reason I hated the
love the
Warrior
Warrior.
is because they let him just come in and run all over the Giant, Andre the Giant.
See,
He was one of the guys he smashed.
I'm going to be honest with you, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember Hogan was starting to wane in popularity, so they needed somebody poppy. And people didn't even realize that literally he came out with Hogan's colors. He just did it differently.
Yeah.
But, come on. But he was huge. He was like a bodybuilder.
He had a big dude.
So that's a perfect toy. He had the long hair, the rocker personality, the Warriors. He said positive things, whatever.
When they try to come up as a good guy back then, you had to say the good things.
Yes.
You couldn't come out and be.
There's no anti-hero up until the 90s.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, the bad guys were like your favorite people. Like, I'm going to root for D-Generation X. I know they cheat, but they talk about boobies and suck it and all this other cool stuff. And I'm a badass. And Austin 316. You know what I mean? There was a feeling to it.
Yeah.
And so during the 80s, there was the Hulkamania. That was actually a thing. I'm sorry. It was literally a thing.
Yeah, Hulkamania went wild on you, brother. And it did. It ran wild through all the schools, through every country.
The pops.
Almost in the world.
The pops that he would get just from showing up. But like you said, though, also with Macho Man.
Yeah.
And all these other, they were huge back then. So, can you think of anybody else that was like just stand out good on the mic?
No, I think that was about it. I'll come up with.
I got one other. Cannot, absolutely not mention.
Okay, who we got?
Jay Lethal.
I don't know who that is.
So he was an AEW breakout. And at one point, TNA.
Mm-hmm.
Tonal Nonstop Action, but everybody knows what they meant by TNA.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Jarrett run and owned.
Mm-hmm.
He started wrestling like other people. This dude is so talented. He could change his voice, mannerisms, and actually wrestle like other people. His most popular...
Is that a black dude?
Yes.
Okay.
His most popular being Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And Randy Macho Man Savage.
He's the guy that did the woo-off with Flair.
You're so brilliant. Thank you. That is one of my best friends in the world right here, reading my brain, because yes, you were 100% right. It has gone down, and it will always go down as one of the coolest moments. And did you know that none of it was scripted?
Okay, I did not.
According to Jay Lethal in an interview that he did recently, he said that he was in the locker room, and Ric Flair knew what was going to happen. And he wanted to go up to him to just kind of run some ideas by him. And Rick says, I don't talk about promos, slapped him on the back and walked off.
Sounds like Flair.
It does, and that's so crazy. But yeah, and so when he walked out there and he started doing I don't know where you think you are the Nature Boy, did the accent so perfectly. Yeah, all of it unscripted. The woo off unscripted. Him elbowing the
ground,
the freaking
rolling. That was
the
great.
coat he took off his back. He's
Yeah.
elbowing it.
Yeah, I know. It was awesome.
Every last bit of that is totally unscripted, and it actually, believe it or not, I looked it up. It does have one of the highest views on YouTube of anything wrestling related.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the, I want to say like the upper 70, 80 million views. Like pushing 100 million
I see it quite
views.
a few times.
And yeah, it's so insane. He can do his voice in woo! You can't do the woo! Only I can do the woo! And they're just woo! 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 And then they just he's dropping knees in the
crowds
on invisible wrestlers, and they're dropping elbows.
It's awesome.
Yes.
Ric Flair at his best.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to
He's doing the thing you did about the Space Mountain. He's doing it. It's great.
Oh, it was. It's one of the greatest moments. And again, it really emphasizes.
And his face is so red. You're like, he's going to kill Ric Flair. Stop it.
Jay Lethal, you're going to kill Ric. He's about to have an aneurysm. He's so mad right now that you are getting a pop off of his shtick. I mean, seriously.
If you kill Ric Flair, I'm coming to get you, you son of a bitch.
Oh, fuck me, Freddie. All right, so we are halfway through our, again, you can't see it unless you're on the YouTube channel.
We gotta take a break.
We gotta take a break.
I can't breathe.
Ben's gotta catch his breath. When we come back, it'll be more of Going Commando with the 80's kids, and we're talking about 80's wrestling.
Oh, my face hurts.
Welcome back, faithful listeners. We are talking about 80's wrestling. So this episode is Going Commando with the 80's Kids presents wrestling of the 80's. We have already talked about who we feel like the majority feel like the most popular was during the 80's. We talked about who we felt like who was the best on the mic during the 80's era, and we've been talking about the 90's just as a comparison. We don't talk about wrestling after 2000. And so now, what we're going to talk about is the greatest heels. So if you're not a wrestling fan, there are two people, a babyface and a heel, and those are wrestling terms. So the babyface is the person that they're trying to give a pop to and become popular, unless you're over, which means at that point it's over versus a heel. The 80's encapsulates this theory. Wrestling went away from it in the 90's, but back in the day, you would have your most popular wrestlers, face off against a no-name. You know, the no-name might get like 10 seconds of offense. But basically, wrestling was a showcase,
so to say.
Yeah, it was a showcase for your most popular people to come in, showcase their strength and their whatever, and then they saved the big matches for the pay-per-views or the big ticket events. But at some point it did shift, and that was in the 80's a little bit. It wasn't majority. I mean, we're really talking about a 90's concept, but that is secondary to what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about the guys that were, purposely out there to make the crowd want them to get beat. The guy that is going to piss you off, the guy that's going to be contrary to your local beliefs, and etc. So I think the best example of this, if I'm going to be honest, which is like Iron Sheik.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
R.I.P. He died like a month or two ago.
Yes, he did.
He had the funniest Twitter account, or X account. If you love wrestling, he had the funniest X account there is. There is no one who even comes second. He would say this random stuff that just makes no sense. Like when Roman Reigns won the belt.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns wins. I congratulate you. Fuck the Hogan.
Jabroni. He always thought
Fuck the Jabroni Hogan.
Yeah.
But he had so many followers that were old school wrestling fans. And again, R.I.P. But it was the Middle Eastern, Afghanistan, sort of like we talked about within. Oh gosh, please remind me. It was something 3. Not Rocky, but Stallone.
Oh, and Rocky 4 with
the John McClane, not John McClane.
John Rambo?
John Rambo, thank you. Rambo 3. At some point they started to use Middle Eastern folks versus, let's say, Vietnam folks.
Yeah.
So it shifted there. And so he played off of it very, very well. He was great on the mic. Not one of the best, because, honestly, English was definitely a second language to him.
He's portrayed very well in the Rock's show on NBC.
Oh, yes, the young Rocky.
Yeah, young Rock. Yeah.
Well,
he is so funny in that show.
Again,
he's like the best character in my opinion, next to Andre the Giant's character.
Based on his freaking X feed, I can imagine this guy actually being hilarious. He was huge.
And dear God, the shape that man was in.
Oh, he could bench press so much weight. And
he did that thing where he did the hammers.
Yes.
What the fuck were those things?
I can't remember.
They weighed 80 pounds a piece or something.
Well, he did the sword at one point.
Yeah.
The centaur. Scimitar.
Yeah.
The one with the big crescent bow.
Yeah, it was the thing you see like when you're watching like Aladdin's Palace or something.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Wait. While we're talking about this brings up a memory, and I'm literally calling time out on the podcast.
Okay.
So we can edit this out later if you want to. We talked about how Temple of the Doom was supposed to be a prequel, right?
Yeah.
Then why, when Indy came up over the mountain before he got to the bridge in Temple of the Doom, and 3 guys showed up with knives, did he smile and then reach for his gun? As if he had been there before. And tell me if I'm not wrong, because I see the look in your eyes. Again, YouTube folks will see it. I see the face of someone who just realized continuity error. I agree with you in terms of everything else. But that one thing stuck in my craw as I was watching it the other night. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Me and Ben have literally talked about this as being a prequel, and we both agree. Yeah.
The timing even fucking says it.
Yeah. The time of the, even they say in the years, it's different than the World War II. So, is it that the first Raiders of the Ark, he's been here before, and that's why he kind of shrugs it off and points? Not necessarily my opinion. I feel like it's a continuity error with Spielberg because, again, the look on his face is, I have been here before.
Maybe they just tied it all up in this last one.
Nah.
When he travels all the way back to Archimedes.
I remember, I haven't seen it.
You have now. So he travels all the way back to Archimedes.
I'm going to block my mic so that y'all don't hear my cackling.
Yeah. So he travels all the way back to Archimedes time.
All right, that's fair.
And they're fighting the fucking Roman invasion.
Again, haven't seen it, so yeah.
And
now I want to see it even less.
They come in a some bitch airplane, World War II era, and it's flying through, and they're calling it a dragon back then because they don't know anything different. So perhaps as they're coming back in time, way back in time, Bill and Ted style, except
gotta get back in time.
That's right. Huey Lewis is playing. There's the DeLoreans. It's all kinds of wicked shit's going on in this
Ready
movie
Player One.
So he lands. Indy wants to stay back in time. He's like, this is where I belong with the artifacts. Fuck you, Indiana Jones. That is not the one I know. He knows this is going to fuck up the space-time continuum, everything else. He needs to go back to where he belongs.
You are without seeing it, and so I have no dogs in the game right now. From what you just said, the character of Indiana Jones understands the ramifications of messing up the timeline. Too much technology, too much information before we discover it is ill-founded gains.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we build our technology on the technology before us. Well, if you just give it to us, we have no foundation to build it off of. So, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, but I can tell you 100%, my Indiana Jones, no way in hell that dude dilutes or whatever the timeline. Yeah. Just going to be honest with you.
He was ready to. Well, he diluted it by leaving his fucking wristwatch behind.
Is that a callback to the wristwatch that has actually been found embedded in stone?
Yeah.
Oh, take popular media and throw it in a movie.
Yeah, so perhaps on his way back to the 60s, he dropped off and gave a little something to Indy from the Temple of Doom that he was going to be seeing it again, and that's how it all
I
tied
don't buy
together.
that shit at all.
Why?
I buy continuity error. I have found an error in a movie, and I'm going to put it out there because
Clink,
it's
clink.
stuck in my crawl.
I'm starting to respect these movies even less.
So back to what we were talking about. Greatest heels. So I think
Steven
one of the
Spielberg.
greatest heels ever is got to be Andre. He could be the greatest hero ever, or he could be the greatest danger. I mean, he's like a Thanos level threat.
Isn't he, though?
I mean, not to bring up
That's
popular
who the
media,
Avengers needed.
but I do believe if you're going to compare them,
Why
then,
was that not a joke that fucking Iron Man made? We need Andre the Giant.
yeah, we need a Hulk. I have an army. Oh, we have a Hulk.
We have an Andre.
We have a giant. And Andre would have whooped his ass the same way.
One of the big hands.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But yeah, so I mean, he could be either. Now, if we're talking same size dude, and I'm gonna, I'm bringing up old wrestlers here. Okay, one of the most popular ever, other than Iron Sheik, King Kong Bundy.
I don't remember him so much. I
Bald
remember him in
dude.
the late runs, but
Bald dude,
Yeah, he
wore
was
the
big
black
fat.
tights,
Yeah.
huge big belly. He was an 80's staple for the bad guy, along with Iron Sheik, and they were both in the cartoon. Big John Studd,
Big Boss Man was a bad guy there.
Big
for a while.
Boss Man. I did not know this, but him and The Rock actually overlap. And I had no clue about that. Yeah. I really did. But there was a video recently, and yes, I love wrestling. So yes, on Facebook, it was like King of the Ring.
Oh yeah.
And they showed Kane pretty much clearing it out, and then later, all love and healing to Test. He was one of the guys that got paralyzed in a wrestling match, and he had so much potential. It was insane.
Boss Man?
Test.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Got paralyzed and he never could wrestle again. But Test was in it, and Big Boss Man was one of the competitors. And I saw the Rock punching Big Boss Man, and I went, "Oh, my brain is recoiling now because it's part 80's and part 2000's almost." I'm just when did this happen? But yeah, one of the greatest heels, Big Boss Man. One of the first times I ever saw wrestling take somebody out of the crowd as a gimmick.
Oh yeah.
Was Earthquake.
Oh yeah.
Remember, he came out and they're like, "Oh, this guy's just a nobody," and he ended up destroying one of everybody's favorites. And again, one of those moments where Hulk had to slam somebody that weighed a lot of.
Yep.
Yokozuna.
I was getting ready to say Yokozuna. He was a really
Everybody
good guy.
loved him. He was, he might be one of the first ones that was an anti-hero. Yeah. Because he had fans. He had a lot of fans.
There were a lot of Japanese people around that time that just started watching wrestling because of him, and that's where the fans came from, I believe.
Well, he did. I don't know if he was an actual Yokozuna class sumo wrestler.
Yeah.
But he did, and something in the back of my brain, maybe he actually reached that and retired, and then came over to America to make some money just off of the wrestling circuit.
I don't know, I think he was related to The Rock like the rest of them.
Rikishi and all those guys, Roman Reigns, they actually are related through a bloodline, and they're all super talented, just unbelievable wrestlers. But yeah, I'm just trying to go through my head who were the bad guys. You had the Honky Tonk Man.
That stupid guitar.
And, oh God, how many people did he plaster with that guitar? And he was really a heel.
Then Jeff Jarrett took over that gimmick.
Right, and then Double J took over that gimmick. But I mean, honestly, I'm talking about people who literally were in the ring for you to hate.
DiBiase and
Ted DiBiase, the
Jake
$1 million
I think were
man.
probably two of the tops.
Well, I would almost say that Jake would kind of wavered between the two.
He went between the two, just like Macho Man did.
Yeah, he sure did. Oh, that's a great pull. Macho Man did have a heel run.
Yeah.
Yes, he sure did. Especially after the WrestleMania, where him and Hogan were wearing the same tights and the same colors.
That was 3 or something.
And Hogan hugged Elizabeth. And so they set it up right there. The Macho Man saw him hugging, and he's like raising, but the Macho Man keeps like, oh, that weird pointer where he only like extends the two digits.
My woman.
Oh, you dig it? That's my Elizabeth. But you see what I'm saying? That set up the
brother. Come on, no, you need to get away from the missus.
He was and we give Macho Man hell, but yeah, I mean, for a lot of his wrestling career, he was a positive dude.
Oh, he was a great fellow.
He was on several talk shows.
Even Macho Man cry.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, that's so good, dude. Yes, and the other, be real to yourself. There's only one you, and nobody else can be you. Dig it.
Yep.
Again, positive affirmations back in these days. And I don't know if the Attitude Era killed it, but man, some of them dudes, the closest I'm going to come to is, oh God, I can't remember his name. He used to say yes. Smaller, diminutive dude, beard. He got hurt. He couldn't wrestle anymore. But yeah, small dude, like X-Pac size. Nordic looking with the beard, blonde beard.
Yeah.
But he was the guy that everybody counted out, and so his shtick was, I can do it. Yes! Yeah, and then the pop was insane. And again, not in the 80s genre, but I'm just giving examples of, let's say, where certain people could say something and the crowd just, oh my God, they went insane.
Well, the reason I say Jake was a villain was because whenever he came back in the 90s, the one where Stone Cold was born there, that King of the Ring.
Right.
Jake was in it, and the big thing was he had turned into this God-fearing, Bible-spouting good guy.
Did they do that? Did they do the Bible thumper?
Yeah, that was him, because he was back, and
I'm going to be honest with you, I don't remember that at all, but that's a perfect way to go into it.
Because he was so babyface. Back in the day, he wasn't like that.
Think about Jake the Snake, though, as a wrestling fan. Back in the day, there are times that you loved when somebody got the snake.
Yeah.
And there were times where you're like, no, don't put the snake on him. It went both ways. So I thought he was one of the best at switching between heel and babyface constantly. But as far as heels go.
Got that cobra, and he had to bite Macho Man.
Good Lord. So Russians. Back in the day.
Russians evil. It's going to be that way.
So one from the NWA, it was Volkov. With the Russian sickle. Fantastic. That was JBL. That's what he stole. The good gosh. Who else other than him? God, there were like 4 really, really popular Russian wrestlers. One looked like Goldberg, Vladimir Koloff. Mm-hmm. No, Nikita Koloff.
Oh, I remember Nikita Koloff.
Sorry, that's the other dude.
He was a big dude.
One of them wrestled down south while the other ones were wrestling up north, and then they went to the USS whatever, some playoff. They come down with the giant like beaver hats, whatever. And so that's another one. Great heels, but they were playing off of a stereotype at that point. Gosh, I'm trying to go through some of the other ones, like what we would call hardcore wrestlers.
Yeah.
There's the ones that are going to hit you with a pine board or something, and they cheated. At some point, and I'm going to go there, Eddie Guerrero. He made the cheater popular.
He did, didn't he, though?
He was not a heel necessarily, but he cheated to win.
Yeah.
And his stage presence is like, at least for me, I don't think there's... I mean, Rey Mysterio's up there. But Eddie Guerrero, Chavo, that came after him, great wrestler. He should have never done the hair restoration ad. That was just death to his career. Yeah. But yeah, Eddie Guerrero, a guy that cheated that you loved to root for.
Yeah.
I mean, he would literally hit you with a chair while the referee was down, and then put it in your hands and then lay like he was unconscious. And the referee would turn around and look at this guy, and he's like, disqualification. Eddie Guerrero pops up. I'm the
Yeah, that's right.
one of the best ever, if I've got to be honest with you. The guy that wrestled Hogan from the Middle East, the monster, the 7 foot.
Oh yeah, I can't remember his name either.
Oh, Jiminy Christmas! Why can't I remember this dude's name? Because he had that weird body suit on that tried to make him look huge.
There's Giant Gonzalez was
Gonzalez.
Yes,
Yeah, there you
yeah.
go. The weird body suit. And he
Yeah.
could not wrestle. I've seen too many
Dude was huge.
documentaries about, he was tall, he was strong, wasn't as strong as some of the wrestlers. And so a lot of these moves, that you would think would be awesome if someone picks you up on a 7'4" frame
Yeah.
and then suplexes you. That's awesome. He wasn't strong enough to hold it. And so a lot of his moves...
When he had the bodysuit.
When he had the bodysuit with the weird fur and he almost looked like Bigfoot.
He was an ugly dude.
He was super ugly. But yeah, one of the guys that were... never went positive. It was a heel from day one.
He didn't last long.
No, he sure didn't.
He didn't have a long run.
No, he didn't. But because his popularity waned so bad, so quick. And I know I'm missing a lot of really popular heels from back in the day. I feel like we've covered some of the most popular ones. And my brain is still churning through them. We hit some of the most popular ones. So let's move on. So here we go. The next part of our conversation is going to be the greatest managers, sidekicks, side ring entertainment.
All right, I want to go first.
So that can do all of it. So please let me know, who's your fave?
Sonny.
Oh, that's a hard to beat one right there, brother.
She changed the game.
The Attitude
Even
Era.
though she's just getting ready to go to prison, but she changed the
but
game.
the Attitude Era with Sable, we have to mention her because of her Playboy spread.
Yeah.
My goodness.
She was managing Skip.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But real quick, let me just put this in there. One of my favorite wrestling memories ever.
Yeah.
Is when Sable came down and she only had the pasties and they still showed it.
Yeah.
And Jerry, puppies!
Yeah, I remember.
Nothing was the same after that.
But she was a wrestler, though.
She did wrestler, but she was, oh gosh, my memory's so terrible. And I apologize, listeners, I really do. She was somebody's wife who was a wrestler.
I don't remember.
Sable came down with another wrestler.
Was that Mark Marrow?
Oh my gosh, you are a genius, my brother.
Yeah.
Mark Marrow's wife, or manager, or whatever you want to call it.
That's right.
God, good memory, my brother. Wow, I am impressed. Color be impressed for pulling that out. But yeah, so, she came down to the ring with him. It wasn't unheard of. It wasn't the first time, like we talked about with Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But it was the first time that the pause on the walkthrough, where they step over and stick their butt in the air, and then the camera angle.
Yep.
I mean, again, not to be sexist about it, but if your main constituent is drunk 20 years old,
well, also
right there,
there is a difference between Miss Elizabeth, Sonny,
classy,
and Sable Marrero. There is a difference between these.
Sable was out there.
All three of these women.
But Miss Elizabeth always wore, she didn't come in a bikini.
This is what Miss Elizabeth I equate to the Scarlett O'Hara beauty.
Oh, see, when you said that, I just figured out how I think of it.
Okay.
Miss Elizabeth is June Cleaver.
Sable
is Debbie Does Dallas.
Great movie.
I mean, I've seen it, of course, because I'm a male of a certain age. I was in college.
It's the first one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
It was. It was.
But yes, and with her Playboy spread and her making so much money in such a short period of time.
Well, anyway, let's get
good
back to
for
Sonny,
her.
though.
I mean, good for her.
Sonny was the manager of Skip and Zip. That was Chris Candino and Dr. Bruce somebody. I can't remember the dude's last name.
I'm sorry, I'm off mic. I actually have a article to read about Chris Candino in my phone right now.
He, poor fella, Sonny put him through hell. She was,
yeah.
She was not a faithful
No.
mate. That's it. They were in a almost marriage, basically.
Well, and
it was a common law marriage, basically. Is what it was.
And I'm going to tell you, one of the things that drove me away from wrestling back in the day was the fact that there was a simultaneous show with John Cena, and they were like fake real worlding it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And I'm like, no, y'all have gone from soap opera to cash grab.
Well, I think she got put into the WWE Hall of Fame.
Did she really?
Yeah, as and put in by all of the current divas.
Oh.
And all the past divas.
Okay, that's fair.
For changing the way that the female is not only portrayed, but what their job is.
Do you mean in terms of being eye candy, arm candy, to being an active participant like the males were during the match, like distracting and doing things like that?
Currently, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Encompassing actually all of that.
Fair enough.
And then also not only that, but actually what the wrestling was, from going from what Mae Young did to what they do currently, is a big jump.
Women's wrestling has made tremendous jumps, and there is a woman out right now that I probably wouldn't want to wrestle. She is so strong.
I wouldn't want to wrestle Charlotte Flair.
Oh, Charlotte, I'd wrestle her. Yeah, I would. But I'm also 6'3", 245, so I've got a little bit of a different. I'm not saying I'm going to beat anybody.
Dude,
don't get me wrong.
She's my size.
Yes, I would wrestle her. I would.
I'm gonna have you in a figure four in a few minutes.
I'm gonna go straight bat in the sun when asked Batman about Wonder Woman. I dominated her. Wait,
right.
do you mean did you? I dominated her.
That's right.
End of the scene.
She's not here to ask, and I dominated.
I dominated her. No, that's way off subject. Yeah, but women's wrestling. Well, number one, the choreography has gotten a lot better.
Oh,
right?
it has.
The women have gotten a lot stronger.
Yeah.
I mean, those women are like literally bench as much as I do or more. What am I trying to say here? The choreography is better, but the okay, so as a wrestling fan, the transitions. Back in the day, women's transitions were horrible from one set to the next set. It wasn't smooth.
Yeah.
And so what I will say is with these new age wrestlers, and there are women who have been doing it forever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they're having fun with it. They love wrestling, and you can tell in the way that they wrestle.
Yeah.
I can see where during the 80s and 90s there weren't enough women watching wrestling and loving it to produce people who want to mimic those actions. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But now the new women, they're very... It started kind of with Lita.
I loved Lita.
Oh, she was so pretty.
She was very athletic too.
And again, the off the top rope Hurricane Rana.
Yeah.
That's something you didn't expect.
And they were billed from North Carolina.
Yes, and the Hardys.
Yeah,
all of them. So again, it's breaking your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't expect, let's say, a woman to do that. And I don't want to sound sexist, but you didn't. No. Nowadays, they do the same thing as the male wrestlers, and you're like, that is awesome. Yeah. There is no preconceived notion of what a female wrestler should do. Yeah. And them breaking through that glass ceiling, or whatever you want to call it, that is awesome. That's not a little bit awesome, that's awesome. Because it just shows you the athleticism of the people that are doing it now.
When I want to watch a good UFC fight,
sure,
I go to the women's fights.
I used to, around the Ronda Rousey time.
Yeah.
It blossomed right around her time, and everybody was so good. And I agree with you 1,000%. It was so awesome to watch. What has happened is the dilution of the market because they tried to push it too quickly.
Yeah.
And now you get these one-sided matches.
They're more apt to have action as opposed to where the men sometimes were just more a lot of rolling around.
I think it depends on the match.
That's true.
Because if you saw the match 2 weekends ago, man, that head kick knockout came out of nowhere. It's true. And the match leading up to it was brutal. So I thought man, you know what? They're getting more parity. You know, they talked about parity in the NFL for 20 freaking years. And now you can't bet on the NFL because who knows who's going to win any given Sunday. That is a good thing. I did not enjoy the NFL when it was the Cowboys for 4 years. It was the blank for 3 years. It was the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Basketball's like that right now. I'm totally convinced that there's going to be basketball fatigue if they don't do something. The NFL, now granted, we're in a Patrick Mahomes era. He is by far the best quarterback. Not even close in the NFL. He's fun to watch. He's wholesome, etc. He's literally America's go-to guy right now when it comes to football. With Joe Burrow being in there, he's the little bit of a cocky guy. He's the one that got interviewed when he got drafted, and they showed him a little picture of himself. And he says, "What do you think about that guy right there?" And he goes, "Looks like a Heisman Trophy winner and a first-round draft pick to me." Without blinking or thinking.
Yeah. Joe
Joe Burrow won me over right then and there.
Yeah, I love him.
I'm like, that's cool. And on top of it, he can back it up.
Yep.
He's a fantastic quarterback. Now, to get back to wrestling, I'm so sorry I went off. I'm so excited about football coming up. I apologize.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But the point is that there are certain people that dominate a market. And they can choose which path they go. And we've talked about it. Hogan went vitamins, prayers, listen to your... You know what I'm saying? So, at the end of the 80s, we might have started to get some anti-heroes leading into what we would call the Attitude Era. However, heels. Sorry.
I only gave one manager. Did you got anybody?
Oh, I'm sorry, managers. Okay, so no, I
Sidekicks,
went off.
whatnot.
Listeners, I so apologize. I started talking about wrestling and then I lost kick. So we got to talk about Miss Elizabeth. We've talked about Sable, and so we talked about Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
Jimmy, Mouth of the South. We talked about Bobby. So
Bobby the Brain.
Now you cannot talk about 80s wrestling and not talk about the Undertaker's side.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
Paul Bearer. Oh, come on! It's even a. They were great at like making funny jokes back in the day.
He gave the interviews.
Always.
Undertaker just stood there at the end. He would say something.
He was in the NWA a long time ago as Mean Mark.
Yeah, that's right.
And people have forgotten that one of his tricks was to like put you in an arm bar, roll it out, and then go up, and then walk over to the middle on the top rope, balanced, and then come down and beat you. So the Undertaker's gone over like so many different personas, you know, ending up with the badass he tried really hard to recreate Stone Cold, and it just didn't.
American
Badass. But back then, he was horrible. I remember being a kid, and you know, it was just blah 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 blah. As soon as he went, you know, with the breaking up of that organization, and you know, it was either WCW or WWF back there. There was no choice. Some decided to stay in the Southern Wrestling Alliance, and then if you wanted to make money, you had to go north. That was just the way it was. And so when they gave him the opportunity to be the Undertaker as a character, now you and I both know back in the 80s that was a shtick.
Yeah.
Who knew it would grow into what it grew into? The coffin matches.
The casket matches always got me.
Oh my gosh. I don't want to say crucified match, but the cross match where someone gets roped up.
I remember that
You know,
one.
get roped up.
Who was that he roped up?
I honestly can't remember. I hate it, but I can't remember.
Was it Shawn Michaels? Or was it Mankind?
I'm just being honest with you.
The Hell in the Cell match.
Hell in the Cell. Him and Kane being brothers.
And the Ring of Fire.
And the ring. Thank you, sir. Yes, you just pulled it right out of my future sentence.
Crazy
so,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
don't forget the Boiler Room match.
Oh, gosh. So, we're talking about someone that went from, like I said, redneck Mean Mark. Like, literally, like, I mean, we're talking full Joe Dirt right here. I mean, you know what I mean? Bad mullet.
To dark garden
and he actually carried the mullet for, if you look back, he actually carried the mullet into the Undertaker's personality before he grew it all out. You know what I mean? But yes, talk about a dude that technically was a heel, but everybody rooted for him.
Yeah.
Because he did what he wanted to do. He did not do what you wanted to do in terms of your favorite character. He did... The Undertaker did Undertaker. But back to the original point, Paul Bearer. With that high voice... yes, nobody can ever forget Paul Bearer. He was one of the greatest. He also, like we talked about earlier, in-ring involvement.
Yeah.
Not much.
No, it wasn't a lot.
Because that dude was fat, overweight. He was just great on a mic.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, you'd see his butt get slammed or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so, one of the greatest ever. And then when we
lid off the urn one time and it was full of light in somebody's eyes.
Oh yeah. I think did they? Now I don't know. I don't remember. But something sparked a memory. Did they ever like splash ashes on anybody?
That's just spark a memory.
Does it spark a memory?
That's not a pay-per-view. That's a TV.
That's what I'm thinking as well. Did they ever throw ashes into somebody's eyes and then them get pinned or something
so.
like that?
It does seem, yeah.
Sorry, off subject, but still, Paul Bearer.
Yeah.
And then I think from there, when you really think about it, you move into the Attitude Era and it became Hot Women.
It really did.
I just don't remember. Like nowadays, the manager is very rare to find. Other than Paul Heyman.
That's true.
I mean, outside of him...
Manager to the stars.
And he's like on CNN and all these other different things pumping up WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Like, he's that good at speaking that they trust him to go and take these interviews.
Well, I forget we just glossed over Freddie Blassie.
Oh my God, Freddie Blassie. What is it? Something Freddie something classy.
Yeah.
Freddie Blassie.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is a great one. He was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
And it always helped to have a guy that wasn't a beefcake. That, let's say, hey, God didn't give me a 6'5" frame, but he gave me a brain where I'm able to talk.
Yeah.
Not nervously in front of thousands of people. And I'm just being honest with you. If I was right there beside The Rock in front of 100,000 people, with him leading me, I'm still pissing down both legs. I'm not a public speaker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that is actually a skill that most people...
Skill. It's a big skill.
What I'm going to say is most people don't appreciate the way that it should be appreciated. Yeah. That is a huge thing, to be able to get a reaction from a crowd. And it's also something that we need to say about wrestling. There is no such thing as a bad reaction. If they boo you, that's awesome. They're into the match.
Yeah.
The worst thing ever in wrestling is silence. So anyway, back to sidekicks. Again, I'm sitting here trying to think about things, and I just, at some point, it just dissolved.
It does, yeah.
And listeners, I will be honest, if you think of somebody that I'm just missing, or Ben is missing, and it's really, really obvious that we forgot somebody, just put it in the comments of the video. No big deal. If I'm the first one to say I my memory's not as good as it used to be. However, if you put it in there, I guarantee I can tell you who they managed and when, and I can tell you if they won championships.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to our next segment is who. Now it's going to be a shorter segment, but we have to mention several names.
Yeah.
Who broke out, meaning who took their opportunities in wrestling, became super popular, and then moved it up to, let's say, a movie or TV. I'll go both even.
Okay.
Movie or TV fame.
Let's start out with who went first.
The first one I remember is, of course, Hulk Hogan and Rocky.
Yeah.
That's the first one I remember, at least.
I think me too.
Now, he was so bad. You know,
Thunderlips.
Thunderlips was great in the ring. He was terrible on film. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he never, let's say, as far as I remember, didn't do any, like, massive...
Oh, that's right. He was in the A-Team as well.
Oh.
Playing Hulk Hogan.
No way.
Yeah, he was. He and Mr. T was chasing somebody down, yeah.
Okay, well, that, Mr. T and Hulk Hogan had, like, this thing going on for a while.
They did.
And, not to be too obvious about it, but, we got a white dude and a black dude. They're both huge. They both say brother. Oh, we're going to make everybody feel so good about themselves. I mean, come on.
Yeah, brother.
Sorry.
Pity the fool who don't take their vitamins.
Pity the fool. But yeah, so he's the first one that I can remember. Now the second one is a little bit more of a pull. They Live.
Yeah, that's Piper. So that's the second one you remember?
Still to this day one of my favorite sci-fi movies.
That's a great film. I really do.
But I don't remember anybody in that in between. I just don't. I mean, maybe
that's
there
87.
Those are the 80s, right?
And Rocky 3 is 83. So 84, 85, 86 would be... Hogan was in a couple other things in between there, like No Holds Bar.
Oh, yeah. He was in some stuff, but I just don't remember him being like the main character.
When did Princess Bride come out with Andre?
Well, that was going to be my next one. I think that's an 80s film.
Yeah, it is. I think it might have been later 80s.
I don't remember Andre in any other films.
No, me neither.
But that is, let's say, of the ones we're talking about.
Yeah.
Rocky, huge.
Yeah.
Hogan, minor.
Yep.
They Live, minor. Piper, huge.
Yeah.
But when it came to the Princess Bride, there's actually kind of a blending in the fact that he's one of several characters.
Yes.
And he's hilarious.
Oh, he is. He's great.
Is he the best actor in the world? No. But, for his lines of dialogue, it was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I have said it a million times. Anybody got a peanut? I mean, anyone our age... If you say, anybody got a peanut?
It's a good movie.
People, I do not think that means what you think it means. I mean, people will remember that.
He's good.
So, outside of those three, can you really think of anybody? Because when we came up
from that era
with our set list, let's say our hot topics, I think I got disillusioned with maybe 90s and aughts wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, you got The Rock and Batista that were really came out really big. The
Rock is a billion-dollar man. Now, he is starting... There's rock fatigue. It is real.
Yeah, it is.
But Jumanji, one of my favorite movies ever.
Even Austin was in a few flame-out, B-budget films, and he was in The Expendables.
Right. But... Triple H was in Blade 3. So,
yeah, he was.
He was hilarious. He was great. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
He just hasn't done anything since. China was in a movie or two.
Mm-hmm.
However, obviously Rock, being in the blockbusters that he has been in. I mean, huge named films. But people don't sleep. There's one WWF/E wrestler that if you look at their box office totals dwarfs everybody else, and of course that is, as you said, Dave Bautista, because he was in the 2 Avengers movies, which made $1 billion apiece. So it's going to be hard for anybody to catch up to that.
That's true.
And on top of it, since he was in that movie, people have really respected his cred. Because he made Drax. Now, here's the comic book guy versus the movie guy. He made Drax a punchline. He made Drax awesome. There's the two sides. He has more quotable moments in the Guardians movies and any scene he's in than everybody else. He steals the show. And I think that led to things like Knock at the Cabin Door. He's just so good. People forget that he was in the 3rd Riddick movie as one of the people that came to capture Vin Diesel.
Oh, yeah?
He's been in so much. He was most recently
in the new Blade Runner.
He's going to be a huge part of Dune. And my favorite, Glass Onion. Knives Out, the Glass Onion. Yeah. Just so good. He is a really good actor. But he's even said, I'm 50. I can't keep up this muscle mass and do what you need me to do in terms of the action star.
Yeah.
So, the zombie. Something Dead. Good gracious. It came out like 4 or 5 years ago. There's so many Easter eggs that people can't understand, and it was Nolan's.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. He was in that. It's on Netflix.
And unbelievably cool. So I think of all the people, at least in my opinion, I feel like he, you can put him on the same par as Rock. I'm not going to say in terms of how many movies.
Oh, no.
But the quality of the movies that he's in.
I would agree.
Because sometimes Rock's in a shitter.
He
or
is.
two, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, Black Adam, I loved it. People didn't.
I did not care for it.
I loved Man of Steel. People hated it. For the same reasons that they hated Black Adam. Too much violence. But when I look at it, I'm like, that's real screen Dragon Ball Z. This is awesome. I loved the first Superman movie with Henry Cavill. But they did, the most people were like, it's too violent. And I'm like, did you ever actually read the Death of Superman comics? Because several cities get leveled.
Yeah.
Millions of people. And you're complaining about the fact that there's a gal from Krypton moving faster than you can see and knocking army men up in the sky. You know what I mean? Anyway, back to the wrestling thing. I can't really think of any. I'm sitting here trying to, like we were doing earlier, I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain. Other than the ones we've talked about. The Giant.
Yeah.
Rowdy Roddy Piper. Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Rock. And Triple H. Can you think of anybody that's made a movie or gone
Cena.
on? Oh, yes. John Cena. That is so fantastic because I will say my favorite DC property is
Peacemaker.
Peacemaker, baby. You and I both love that show.
I do. I love
because
it.
The
it's
ridiculous,
so great.
it's so ridiculous that it's fantastic.
I love that fucking bird.
And I'm sorry, Eagly is my spirit animal. Yes, John Cena, and I'm so sorry. You know what? I can't believe I'm going to do this. I don't know about box office totals, receipts, or whatever. I'm going to say that John Cena, at this moment in time, might be more popular than Rock in movies.
Oh, I think he is.
He just made that movie with Jackie Chan that came out on Netflix 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's a good film. It's not great. It really isn't great. But it's good watch.
Yeah.
But with him being Peacemaker, honestly, it was who? Suicide Squad 2, right?
Yeah.
Stole. Him and Idris Elba.
Oh, yeah.
Stole the whole movie from everybody else. Their competition as they're walking into the enemy camp, where they're just killing people and looking at each other. One of the funniest things I've ever seen. The show Peacemaker. I did not know how to take it, but James Gunn is at his best in that. I mean, honest, it's one of my favorite superhero multi-episode shows of all time.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. Loved it.
It's just so good. So, yeah, thank you for saying that, honestly, because that would have skipped my memory. I am going to probably not make people happy by saying this, but I am going to go there. I think John Cena might be more prolific than The Rock. And the reason I'm going to say that is, did you see the movie Blockers?
Yes.
That's a total, adult kind of comedy.
Yeah.
He did. Oh, he was fantastic.
He was. Yeah.
He's been in action movies. Fantastic. He's been in comedies. Fantastic. I think he might have a little bit more range because as I'm thinking of it, as the wheels are turning, I'm thinking about that Rock's foray into The Rock and the little girl.
Oh, yeah, the Tooth Fairy. No, wait.
Tooth Fairy's one of them. You're 100% right.
No, was that him or was that Diesel?
No, that was him and little dark-haired girl.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
He's also done some Kevin Hart stuff.
Yeah.
Now, the one with Kevin Hart where he's a spy and
CIA, yeah.
That was actually pretty darn good, but there's some other movies where it just fell really, really flat. Now, again, so I'm going to be 100%. I like to just be out there. I thought one of his best roles was in Get Shorty 2.
I think I saw that one.
It is John Travolta. It's kind of like a mafia flick.
Yeah.
The most famous, and forgive the cursing, but the most famous line is, I heard the fucking smog is the fucking reason that the sunsets are so fucking beautiful here. So that's the first one. And the second one, again, it's all about a mafia dude trying to get a movie produced. He drives around in like an Astro van. And so it's a running joke that it's the Cadillac of minivans. It's a running joke, and it is actually pretty darn funny. But in the second one, The Rock is somebody's bodyguard.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, he might be homosexual. Mm-hmm. Not that that matters, but he does kind of play into it in the character later. But yes, Shorty kicks his ass. John Travolta.
Yeah.
Like, huge Rock. And he's just, like using finger holds and shit. And then Shorty's like, do you think you want to be in a movie? And from that point on, The Rock is like his guy.
Yeah.
Because he thinks The Rock is going to put him in a movie role that'll get him over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great film. I got to give The Rock range on that one.
Yeah.
But just for full disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as I'm talking, trying to think of any other wrestler in any other film. And I just can't pull it. Yeah. Not a major film, at least.
Yeah.
I think maybe Raymond Reigns was in something recently, but not like as a major character.
He was in that movie with The Rock, the Fast and Furious movie, but in the very end, that was
yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
But no,
but yeah, so
I think we've come to the end of that one.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought that was going to go so much longer.
The breaking out of wrestlers is not as prolific as we thought.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I thought that would be like a 20 to 30 minute topic, and the only reason it was is because we were going through the three guys' filmography.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we're at the end, this is just listeners, total personal opinions between me and Ben Davis. So who are?
Last week, viewers. Karthy
Listeners.
said two things.
Or viewers.
Either way. Two things that I said I was going to ask him this week that he didn't respond
That's
to.
fantastic. And me and Ben have talked about it. I don't want to spend time on a podcast like going through my mess-ups from the week before. I know I misspeak a lot. But this is kind of interesting because I did not know this was going to happen until this exact moment. So the YouTube people can see me like, oh, I'm kind of looking at this. So, go shoot.
Last week you said you had a favorite Kelly Clarkson song. What is it?
Since You've Been Gone.
Okay. All right.
I'm man enough to admit it. Since You've Been Gone is a great song. And, as a pop song, if you're running down the road, I don't care. You can open up and sing that one.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Since You've Been Gone.
We talked about the Genie.
Which one?
Sinbad movie.
Yes.
So I've looked into it a little bit more. And Sinbad has come on the record and said that there are 3 copies of it left in existence.
Are you being honest with me?
He said this live.
Mandela effect thing.
He said
that he is denied for 25 years. He has come back and said, yes, there was a movie.
This is the thing. People don't know if he's joking or not. He said that there are only 3 copies left in existence. And if someone has it, they have your name on that list and they will come and get those copies.
So here's my take. Because of technology today, I'm almost scared that this is real.
I know.
I'm almost like Sinbad hasn't been in the public eye for a while, so this would be a great opportunity to drum up some publicity. However, this is so crazy that you mentioned this because I have some news as well.
Okay.
Not that I was going to announce it or anything, but this was cool. It was just on Twitter or Facebook within the last month. Someone has a copy of the Berenstein Bears with the E. Now, in this collection, there are 2 tapes. One is spelled one way, and the other is spelled the other way. The cover has EI.
Yeah.
The first of the 2 tapes. You remember when we used to get double VHS tapes?
Yes, I do.
So the first one is EI, but if you look at the second one, it is AI.
What the hell?
I'm just saying, like, maybe people aren't crazy, and maybe there's no such thing as the Mandela effect. Maybe there were typos.
Of course there's typos.
That is the most logic. So, there's 2 types of reasoning, right? When it comes down to figuring, there's Holmesian, and there's Occam's razor.
Yes.
So, for those who aren't into things like nerdy like I am, So when you're trying to figure something out and you can't figure out the answer, there's two ways to logically progress through it. One of them being Sherlock Holmes, was written in a book. If you eliminate every single solution to a problem, whatever is left over, however improbable, has to be the reason. That's Holmesian, and that leads to great literature.
Yes.
Occam's is whatever the simplest answer to any question is always correct. The universe is not as convoluted. Yeah. People are not as convoluted as you believe them to be.
I usually found that to be very true when working in the hospital.
Almost always true, as I aged.
Yeah.
And I was a young person, I loved these complicated answers and conspiracy. They made me feel alive. However, when you get older and you're just less willing to put up with a whole lot of bullshit, let's say, then you realize probably the most simple answer. So guess what? In the terms of some of these Mandela things, I remember specifically. So I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I do remember this specifically. There was a rumor in the early aughts or late 90s that Chris Tucker had committed suicide. Now, he disappeared from film for a long time.
And Chappelle both disappeared at the same time.
And so there was credence to that rumor. You know where it came from? The movie, It was
Dead Presidents?
Dead. Thank you, sir. You read my mind for a third time today. Where he commits suicide in that movie.
Yeah.
That's where it started. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take much to, go, okay, now I understand where the rumor came from.
Yeah.
Someone told somebody that in a movie, Chris Tucker committed suicide. That got translated to the next person, Chris Tucker committed suicide. Right. And we haven't seen him. So there's nobody pre-internet as we know it.
God damn, that was a good movie.
It was a great movie. Love that scene with the mask. Oh, it really was a great movie. So for me, the older I get, the more I think about conspiracy. I'd love them to be true. And then guess what?
You know what, dude?
What?
This came to my mind.
Oh,
the old black guy in there that's helping out.
Yeah,
that's the same.
The one in the store.
That's the same black guy that fights Roddy Piper, and They Live, isn't it?
Oh, dude, I would have to see their faces. I'm so sorry, I cannot remember.
I'm pretty sure that's the same guy.
I mean, it might be. I mean, actors tend to pop up randomly in films.
10 years later, but I'm pretty sure that's
But however, back to the original subject, is that the reality of things is probably a lot less exciting than things. So I'm going to bring this back into wrestling with the Von Erich crowd.
Oh.
There was so many rumors. But he was called the Rooster, and he was from Terry Von Erich.
Yep.
From a predominantly very Texas, super popular wrestling family.
Yeah.
All three siblings committed suicide. And so the rampant amount of speculation about why they did it, how they did it, et cetera, et cetera. It's sometimes the fanatical life is so much more interesting than our just boring life. Mm-hmm. That maybe there were things going on that we didn't understand, or psychologically it actually does run in families. But either way, when it comes to wrestling, I know we've gone off on a major tangent, but truth is often not more fabulous than fiction. It is almost always more boring.
Yeah.
So when you're coming for the answer of something, then more often than not, it is probably the worst answer. A la Chris Benoit when he murdered his child and wife. But that dude had thousands of concussions probably at this point. And the steroids that he was encouraged to take to get that beefed up. You can go through all these mind control, whatever conspiracy theories about why he did it. But, again, once you come down to the honest to God's truth about it, it's probably more likely that it was a simple explanation of, well, it has been proven if you do X, Y, and Z, you're more likely to go unhinged. Roids plus concussions equals crazy. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Too many concussions just equals crazy.
I agree. Let's take a break, and then we will
we
come
can do
back
that.
in and we will finish things up. We still have to discuss our top 3.
I got to gather my thoughts on that.
We got to, and again, it can be whether you like it. It could be your wrestler, because I can tell you right now, mine includes a wrestler that is my favorite. Not, let's say, these are not the top 3 wrestlers of all time.
But yeah,
literally, this is Ben Davis and Karthy's top 3 each, just like we did the Jedi Council. Just like we've done with everything else. This will not correspond to tickets sold, T-shirts sold.
Oh, dear God, you know who we forgot on the mic?
Oh, Lord. Who?
Dusty Rhodes, baby.
Oh, my God.
It's been 30 long years.
You know what?
And I've been putting up with you, Ric Flair. You silver spoon brother. What are you doing?
He had that little bit of a lisp.
Yes.
So sometimes when he's talking to you, brother, he says, when I drop the atomic elbow on you, you're going to feel it, brother. Little bit of a lisp.
And he had that Georgia accent.
Again.
That you knew all too well.
Me being down there, I heard it and respected it. Yes, 100%. And his son and nephew, huge in wrestling.
Yeah.
Or brother and nephew, or son and, I don't even
Cody,
remember. Cody Rhodes
those are both
and
his
Dustin
sons.
Rhodes are
Those
huge.
are his sons.
I thought Dustin was a nephew.
No, Dustin is his son, and
then
then
I thought
Cody is
was
his son. That is
their stepbrothers.
They are stepbrothers.
Okay,
exactly.
thank you. I got that confused.
Because look at them; they look
my
very
gosh.
similar.
Well, okay, so real quick, we will take our break here in a second. So if we're gonna go that deep, then number 1, the Boogie Woogie Man.
The Boogie Woogie Man. Oh my God, that name is so awesome.
Straight now, he wrestled in the 80s, but you felt that Wolfman Jack 70s vibe off of him every single time he spoke. The Junkyard Dog.
I was going to say Junkyard Dog too.
The Junkyard Dog.
That was good.
Great on the mic. And so when you go up through those rankings, you look at again, Rock and Roll Express. They were great.
They were.
The Midnight Express, Win Togethers, where they could feed off one another. Great. The Four Horsemen. Great.
Always in a group, they were spectacular because Rick would start them off,
and then get the juices.
Remember, they always had Rick. Then they had the tag team that were always so technical and good. And then they had the one big man who was the enforcer.
The enforcer. Like I said, Lex Luger became the enforcer when Teddy Busey. Sorry.
Oh, yes, that was his name.
That was the 4th one. That when he left, Lex Luger, they were trying to push him over, and that's where he got his thing.
Oh, God.
Great pull, dude. I had totally forgot. Yes, Dusty Rhodes is one of the best to ever do it.
God, that 30
and I
long
felt
years is so great. I love it.
I felt like he was one of those people that could find the cadence and find the rhythm of the crowd that he was in.
I never realized just how much after he stopped wrestling he was involved behind the scenes.
Oh God, yeah.
Not only with WCW, but then when he just went right over to WWF and went right up into the office.
A lot of those older guys,
they just respected him.
They have to respect what they've done, and it's such a niche market. You know what I'm saying? In terms of getting the arena. Getting the ring set. I mean, that's got to be a huge job. I mean, it just has to. And when you've been on the road, like since the days where it literally was an 18-wheeler and a bunch of cars carpooling, you know the logistics of the business.
Yeah.
We're going to do a Friday and Saturday night show. Saturday nights, the blackout matches, they're going to be put on Sunday morning or whenever, you know what I'm saying? To know that aspect of the business, I would almost assume it's something like putting on a concert. Taylor Swift has very famous people running her record-breaking tour right now.
Yes.
We've talked about it. I'm not a Swiftie, but you got to respect the woman for making billions of dollars.
Who are we going to get to do our tour?
Well, I've set up some dates. Right now, we're going to be in your studio where we're at right now. After that, we're going to be in your studio, and then we're going to travel after that, and we're going to be in your studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we got some coming up in your garage this winter, right?
So again, we're going to go to a break here. I want to do fun things, and this is just me being the way I am. Me and Ben had an opportunity to drive 6 hours, and I thought it would be a great road trip podcast. It fell through because of people needing to leave earlier. But there's also the fact that my household was full of people at one point. Now it's been reduced by half.
No, mine's full.
My daughter, being 15, doesn't come out of her room. My wife is still in the hospital, and I can work remotely. So I spend a lot of time at the house, and I thought it'd be cool to kind of let's broadcast from blank. So one of the ideas I have had, and we'll just go ahead and talk about it on the podcast for the hell of it. Let's go to a brewery and broadcast. Like, have beers, broadcast, have fun while we do it, because that's what we're doing at your house anyway, right?
Yeah,
we're just sitting here talking like we normally would if we were just hanging out in the first place. So I think we're gonna do some interesting things. We've got HorrorCon coming up in 2 weeks.
Oh wow, that soon?
Yeah, it's in 2 weeks, dude. And so me and Ben are definitely going that together. We missed a con recently because of sickness and all this other stuff. But yeah, HorrorCon's coming up. We have a guarantee of the guy who did Friday the 13th. The man who played Jason 3 through 8. We have some of the greatest actresses in. And, I say that with a little grain of salt. When it comes to horror people, they got great screams, but at least 4 different actresses that have been in movies that you and I have seen.
Yeah.
And they're adding more people because of the ticket sales.
Okay.
So great opportunity.
These actors got nowhere to be right now.
With the SAG-AFTRA, if they're obeying that, then they can't talk about current projects.
Exactly.
But all these people did their projects back in the 80s.
Exactly.
And so what I'm hoping we'll be able to do is walk around the convention center and look at different... I mean, we can film it on the iPhone.
Shirts.
But, look at T-shirts, look at merchandise, and then be able to meet some of our favorite horror.
Yeah.
For those who are newish to the podcast, Ben and I are horror freaks. That is one thing that we've always kind of felt drew us together, is our love of horror movies. So get ready for October, because it's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
And so possibly we'll be able to broadcast. I'm not sure. I don't know how stuff is portable, because we got all sorts of crap all over the place now. But yeah, HorrorCon. It's going to be fun in Concord, North Carolina, at a convention center. And so that'll be something that we're going to do soon. So again, we're going to go back to the original thing that I said about 5 minutes ago.
That's
Right.
I
went off on a massive tangent, and I do apologize. We are going to take a break.
And then long minutes, brother.
Oh, we're going to take a small break, and then we'll come up and we're going to finish things up. So we will see you soon. Welcome back, faithful listeners, to Going Commando with the 80's Kids presents 80's Wrestling. So far, we have gone over what we consider the most popular wrestling. We have gone over who we thought was the best on the mic. Again, 80s style. So don't come talking to us about The Rock or Stone Cold or whatever. We have talked about the greatest heels, the bad guys that used to take the shellacking back in the day but give it right back to make our wrestling matches interesting. We have talked about sidekicks, which technically means managers and or female companions and or male companions. I mean, there's been a lot.
Whatever, yeah.
And then we went through our top 3. Or actually, we went through the ones that broke out, and I'm going to be honest with you, that was a short segment, and that was my fault, because for some reason I thought there were more wrestling movie stars from the 80s, but there weren't too many, but we went over it thoroughly. And then, of course, rounding out our last segment is our top 3 wrestlers and why. And so I need just to remind our listening audience, this is not who we believe are the top 3 wrestlers of all time. These are solely our top 3 wrestlers who we enjoyed. Yeah. Doesn't have to be a winner, could be a heel, could be a loser, for all we care. We just enjoyed watching them. So, Ben, you want to lead us in, or do you want to tell mine?
I'll go first.
You go first.
Just name them all 3, or just we'll go one?
Let's go one by one, just for the heck of it. So,
my favorite of all time was the guy who I felt whenever he started talking this spiel. Right. I'm like, I understand that. That's how I feel a lot of the time.
Sure.
And that was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay, so I will go ahead and say we've got one in common.
Yeah.
All right. And 1,000% definitely took advantage of that Southern aspect to wrestling.
Yeah.
The Austin 316, probably one of the top T-shirts of all time. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it might be.
Yeah.
Austin 316 says, "I just whooped your ass." Again, the Attitude Era, men being of a certain age that we were. That was fantastic. I loved wearing that shirt. Plus with the little skull.
I remember the first time he said it. I saw it live. He said it about Jake the Snake.
Yep.
You can quote your Bible verses all you want. You can have your John 3:16. Well, I've got Austin 3:16, and it says, "I just whipped your ass." Oh my Lord, says Jim Ross.
Again, we can't really talk about. Well, you know what? Hold on. Are we going top 3 wrestlers or top 3 80s wrestlers?
We're going top 3 wrestlers. This is when everything comes into it.
Okay, that is fine. And I mean, Stone Cold was wrestling in the late 80s.
He was.
But he was fabulous. Yeah. Whatever his
fabulous.
name was.
He went by.
Remember, he had the long blonde hair and stuff back in WCW. And I can't not deny that. So, you know, I had a split second there where I was wondering all the time. But yes, we have one in common. Reason being, I talked about it on the last podcast or two ago. I remember after the Goldberg defeat.
Yeah.
I got all of those pay-per-views and paid for them and invited whoever wanted to come over.
Mm-hmm.
And Goldberg has a run of so many numbers of wins.
Yeah.
Right? For him to lose in that fashion made me so unhappy that I did not watch Monday Night Nitro that following Monday. Now, me being a wrestling fan, I did watch WWE or WWF. I mean, I used to watch it back in the day. It's not like I'm unfamiliar. And it was one where The Rock was the third commentator. I remember because they're cheering somebody on, and it's obviously not. And can you hear the millions and millions going, "Rocky, Rock"? And the straight guy's going, "I'm pretty sure they're saying X," and he's like, "You're a dumbass." Again, back in the day when he would like really cut people down. And then Stone Cold came out with the milk. Oh, the beer.
Yeah.
The grabbing and the bird and the I'm gonna stomp a mud hole in your ass and walk it dry. It's that little tiny kind of redneck southern thing that you're just like, woo! You really want to root for the guy.
That's the Texas in him.
That's the Texas in him, baby. And side note, his reality show is actually better than you believe. Now you got to like reality TV shows because of all the backstabbing and bitching and whining. However, it is fun to see Stone Cold. Anyway, but yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin, 100% we have that matching in terms of favorite wrestlers.
Yeah.
Again, just mine and Ben's, not top 3. I'm going to keep repeating this.
Okay.
Our favorite wrestlers. So yeah, we got that one in check. So mine next one would be Goldberg.
Okay.
Possibly Situation and Time. Being honest.
Yeah.
However, the Goldberg cheer. Goldberg.
Yeah.
I mean, it echoed in stadiums. It was so loud. The pop that he used to get. And again, with my liking of, let's say, Hawk and Animal, I kind of, every once in a while, I like to just kind of give away that suspension of disbelief, you know what I mean? And just see somebody get wrecked. And, Goldberg did that. And on top of it, he did it in a way that was just so violent. And at the same time, again, we talked about earlier with the studies, us watching violent things doesn't make us more violent.
Yeah.
It's a cathartic release. You know what I mean? In our brains, we're imagining it, so we get the same release of frustration, built up, whatever. You know what I mean? And he did that perfectly. He was literally a walking stereotype of a wrestler.
Yeah.
Huge, super muscular, not a lot of emotion. No. He was one of the worst on the mic.
Oh, yeah, not good. No.
Again, I'm telling you, one of my top 3 wrestlers, and he was awful on the mic. Again, he wasn't an 80's guy. He was in a movie or two. Did not fly. I mean, no one could reproduce The Rock's success at that time. But yeah, it was just really fun.
Well, he's on the Goldbergs. He was on that TV show.
He did show up on that 80s like sitcom show.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
that's My People, the Jewish folks.
Mm-hmm.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was on the last couple of seasons as the PE teacher.
That is hilarious. Bill Goldberg on the Goldbergs.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. But yeah, again, solely for the reason of it being just, he's the monster guy, sort of like the Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Comes in, kicks ass, leaves. Yay, I get to scream. And then, that's the end of it. So,
10-minute match was long for him.
It was. And I hate to say it, but, at least one or two people blamed the end of their careers on him.
That's who my number 2 is. I'll tell you about it.
All right, so we'll get into that in 1 second. They blame him. And,
they do.
And I just saw an interview from back in the day with Kevin Nash. And they were like, who would you rather wrestle for 100 nights in a row? And everybody unanimously, they went through several wrestlers. They all unanimously said not Goldberg.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because they said he didn't pull his punches.
Yeah.
He had the padded gloves on.
Mm-hmm.
And so he thought for some reason, because he didn't feel it, you didn't feel it. And they talked about the professionalism within the business.
Mm-hmm.
And how certain wrestlers, you could wrestle 100 times, get a massive pop, everybody goes home happy, but I can get up the next day and not be beat up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for, considering the occupation, it's not real, quote, end quote, but let me pick you up above my head as a 6'3" person and then drop you on your back.
Yeah.
I know there's springs under there and the whole nine that takes some of the shock out of it, but that hurts.
Oh, yeah.
So, they're almost like acrobats or, what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like stunt men, if you will. So yeah. But now I'm super excited. Name your number 2.
Number 2 is the excellence of execution. Bret the Hitman Hart.
Anyone who doesn't respect him, I don't respect them as a wrestling fan.
Who says that his career was ended during a match with Goldberg when he took a full-on head kick.
Yeah, boot to the head.
Yeah, concussion knocked him out.
Yep. That was the last concussion he would ever get, but Bill didn't time it right.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally just laid him out. And I know that comes with the occupation, with the job. You're going to be on TV, sort of like a professional athlete. You do have an opportunity to get seriously injured. Even as a huge Goldberg fan, I watched that and I'm just like, ugh. Oh,
I've read a few things about the Hitman, but the funniest thing I read was a story from Scott Hall about when they were all wrestling in WCW. They were up there in Calgary doing the Calgary Stampede.
They're from. It's Canadian.
He's from there, yeah. And so he had them all over to his house for a dinner.
That's awesome.
And as he was showing them around the house, he said that Bret actually in every room of the house, you cannot find a photo that does not have Bret decked out in his Hitman gear. The stupid Sergeant Pepper thing with the tassels.
That is so glad that you said that, because I honestly, I thought I was the only one that noticed the Sergeant Pepper kind of like look, or the Michael Jackson look at that time, when he had the Sergeant Pepper looking.
Before he went to the straight leather jacket.
Oh, yes.
And he said even above his bed is a picture of just him in his gear, in the stupid glasses.
You know what? We've seen it as a movie trope a million times.
We have.
That arrogant guy who has a self-portrait above his bed. I don't care how rich I get. I don't care how famous I get.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you one thing, Ben Davis. There will never be a portrait of myself anywhere in my house.
No.
The idea of that is almost nauseating to me. Like the ego that has to go along with having a painting of yourself in your house.
That's crazy, isn't it?
But, it was popular like a couple of 100 years ago, apparently. That was a sign of wealth, that you could afford the painting and then hang it up.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, that's smack. And I'm going to be honest, I can see Hogan doing it.
I could.
You know what I mean? I mean, just being honest, I can see Hogan having the pose.
Ooh,
the 24-inch pythons, brother. I can
Mm-hmm.
see him having a self-portrait. Dude. One of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I love him and Jim the Anvil.
Oh, yeah, when they were damn, they were
That's the thing.
Heart something.
Heart Express?
Or
Heart
something.
Break? No.
They were the
Night
Heart.
Express.
I can't remember what they were.
It was Jim the Anvil Night.
They were a good tag team, yeah.
Anyway.
But my favorite things with him were when he was doing it with Yokozuna.
Oh, yeah.
And then the 60-minute match with...
Those hour matches are always
with
awesome.
Shawn Michaels.
Those hour matches, you got to be really talented at what you do to keep a crowd invested for an hour. I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody says. It's hard enough to speak and tell jokes and keep a crowd.
Yeah.
Imagine if y'all are like rolling around and not really doing a lot of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
You can lose a crowd super fast. But those guys were so adept at reading crowd noise, crowd pops, that they knew when to switch back and forth between who was going to be the dominant,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who's going to be like the taking damage versus dishing it or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, freaking fantastic, my man. Freaking, that's a great pull. So well done, my friend. You want to do your number 3, or do you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead.
All right. So again, we're going straight off of popularity, like who we enjoyed. So I apologize for mine being a little bit of a popularity list, but yes, The Rock.
Okay.
Now, if you'll notice one thing among all of mine, it's the mic.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the mic. And I have never laughed as hard as I did, at least mic people, between Stone Cold and The Rock.
Yeah.
You know, him telling people to go to the avenue of SmackDown Boulevard and Jabroni Ave. Check directly into the SmackDown Hotel. Go to the 5th floor. Check in, and they got a complimentary hot piping glass of monkey piss for you.
Yeah.
Little tiny things like that. Just over-the-top crowd reactions. I'm going to whoop your monkey ass. It doesn't matter. Just all these different things. He's one of the best to ever do it. He could take an ass whooping and dish one.
Yeah.
That's one thing that people don't realize about The Rock. He lost a lot to Stone Cold.
Yeah.
And some other popular people. Then he also gave those ass whoopings back when he was the top, technically anti-hero.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a babyface because he would do what Rock wants to do, but everybody loved him. And so again, I don't want to do a popularity contest. I just have to go off of what person, or what era, whatever, and it's going to be the Attitude Era because of my age.
Yeah.
But what person made me laugh, get involved, made me interactive, etc. Stone Cold and The Rock being there together. I'm sorry, it was one of the best times to ever be
The Rock was really good.
Wrestling fan. It just really was. He just come up with these odd ass sayings or these odd ass cut downs.
He did, didn't he?
And the next thing you know, everybody's using them. Like literally everybody. And so I think that, I mean, you would shut up when The Rock came on. Like, if we're all watching wrestling together as buddies, we all shut up because we want to see what ridiculous shit The Rock is going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you have that much power over the crowd, that's huge. I mean, that really is. That's huge. So, that is my number 3. Who is yours?
Ric Flair.
Oh, another great choice. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. If I have to go with my favorite wrestler, Rick is in the top 3.
Yeah.
We're talking about skill, combination of Mike, and he could do those hour matches. He's like, oh gosh, I think I'm being a little bit biased, but yeah, Rick is up there. Great choice.
Anybody ever says to me, who do you think is the best wrestler ever? That's who I always pick. He never says that he's the best. He says I'm the greatest.
Right.
But then he always says that Shawn was the best performer.
At this.
Yeah.
Hogan was this. The Rock was this.
But
well, he is not. He is not wrong, because in terms of the sport, entertainment sport, whatever you want to call it, of wrestling, his arsenal is massive. His number of moves. The way when you whipped him into the turnbuckle that he would do the flip.
Yeah, that was spectacular.
Shawn Michaels literally copied that later.
Yeah.
As the entertainer, actually, you know what? He might be one of the greatest of all time.
I think he is.
I'm rethinking things. Again, it was my favorite, not the greatest.
Yeah, I know.
So you know what?
Your favorites. You named your favorites.
You know what? I'm actually gonna. You're perfectly right on that. I'm gonna rescind what I said. If I had to pick the greatest, he's up there, top 3. But my favorites. So we were doing it differently. But yeah, that's cool that you picked Ric Flair because he was such a massive presence down south.
Mm-hmm. Which is where I'm from, and
such a massive presence. I mean, when Greensboro was a top location,
yes,
Georgia were huge locations. They did a lot of smaller venues in Georgia, but they did Starrcade in Georgia, in Atlanta, and different things. So that's awesome.
Like here in Winston, they used to come.
Yes, I remember
WCW with Ric Flair.
Yeah,
I mean, not
a lot of wrestling promotions that say we're blank with this.
Yes.
Like we talked about earlier with the Giant.
Yeah.
WWF presents the Giant. Who cares about the undercard? Everybody's waiting to see the 7'4", 500-pound eighth wonder of the world. So
that's right.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. So, do you think we covered the subject?
We've talked about wrestling a lot.
I feel like
you've done a good job pigeonholing us to the 80s.
Yeah, only because I have such an extensive wrestling knowledge. Now, not like horror, not like heavy metal, because those are my 2 really loves. But wrestling was my 3rd love, let's say, as I was growing up.
Yeah.
And I was afraid I have faithful listeners. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I have a tendency to ramble.
Yeah.
Or go off on so I really wanted to make sure that I talked about 80s wrestling.
I would have taken us a little bit further into the 90s.
The only reason is because it's its own beast. And that's my only reason. 80s wrestling was more bubblegum.
It was.
Poppy. Like we talked about before, Tina Lauper. Captain Lou Albano.
Yeah, the captain.
More mainstream media. I mean, seriously. Now, just recently, like 2 weeks ago, I saw Raymond Reigns on ESPN. So maybe they're trying to blend those lines again like they did in the 80s. But the 80s wrestlers were way different than the 90s as they were so much, and so I feel like they deserve a certain spot. Because the ones in the 60s and 70s, they were just gruelers. They got the crap beat out of them, drove thousands of miles, got paid peanuts, and then all of a sudden in the 80s, I felt like that's where it started to, again, they sold out Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
That's an impressive feat. I'm just being honest.
Yep.
That's an impressive thing. So to discount the cultural impact of wrestling, when people were willing to spend several $100s.
Yeah.
And travel miles upon miles. And an entire arena, like being a football arena, being reduced down to like the squared circle, as they say, with seats everywhere. And everything is full. If you don't appreciate 80s wrestling, then I don't know what
the 80s made wrestling.
I agree 1,000%. Yeah, I would say that. It was super popular, especially with the Kaufman thing, with the King and everything else. But in the 80s, with Starrcade and WrestleMania, it sent them way over.
There were spots in America where wrestling was huge.
I agree, and there were spots where it wasn't.
But then after Vince McMahon pulled off WrestleMania,
no one expected it to be that huge. And then when so many people showed up and so many people actually paid to watch it.
Yeah.
And they made so much money, all of a sudden they're like, hold on here. Maybe we've just scraped off the top of the iceberg, let's say.
Exactly. He made it a spectacle event.
He did. And that's where the sports entertainment factor comes in,
Exactly.
But yeah, great. Man, this has been kind of fun to talk about wrestling back in the days. So we're gonna.
That's good because I'm gonna put you to work for next week.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. The brain is gonna be churning. So, again, this is Going Commando with the 80s Kids. I got to throw in that old Omega Sports voice. Omega Saturday T-shirts 4 for $5. Omega. If you were around here, you remember that. But yes, Going Commando with the 80s Kids presents 80s wrestling. I feel like we covered it pretty well. Once again, this is Karthy and Ben Davis, and as always, Ben Davis, take us out.
All right. We are, as he says, Going Commando with the 80's Kids. You can find us on all social media platforms, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as Going Commando with the 80's Kids. Excuse me, that's X now. And you can also get us on YouTube as Going Commando with the 80's Kids. We have a library now of episodes that you can...
We really do. We have a lot for you to listen to. Again, we've talked about it before. First season being music.
Yeah.
That was our main focus. And then we wanted to have a little bit more fun with it. And so we switched over to our current format. And we've really, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. We've been doing this for 3 years. It is pretty impressive, the number of albums that we covered.
Yeah, it was.
And it's pretty impressive the number of, let's say, movies and genres that we've covered. There's a lot to listen to, and I'm actually proud of that.
It's actually surprising that I look at the music that we listened to and the albums we did. Mm-hmm. A lot of those bands are actually on tour right now.
We predicted it because we are awesome.
So, this has been Wrestling with Going Commando with the 80's Kids. This has Ben Davis Karthy. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.